Oh, did that the last time I was here. Good evening, everyone. This is a call to order for the Health, Safety, and Facilities Committee meeting for the Board of Education. Today is Tuesday, May 9th. The time now is 6:05 p.m. And so in attendance, we have myself, Chair of the committee, Christine Baptiste Perez, and we have both committee members, Albert Benaham and David Glenn, online. And the first item that we have on the agenda is approval of the minutes from February 7th, 2023.
So move.
What are you moving?
Well, you said approval of the minutes, right?
Okay, we have a motion to approve the minutes from February 7th, 2023. I'll second it. Are there any edits, changes to the content? Okay. All right. All right, we'll vote on it now. All in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, the minutes pass. The next item that we have on the agenda is the presentation on the HVAC grant award. So we have Mr. Garcia here from our facilities. Present.
Good evening, everyone. We wanted to give a quick update. We've been discussing all of the grants that we've been working on. We had a pretty in-depth conversation last time at the last facilities committee. So we're happy to report that we finally have been granted a grant. This is a state Department of Administrative Services grant for indoor air quality. The grant is in the sum of $982,125. The grant is for the chiller installation over at Tisdale School. The chiller is currently installed. We're putting in the drives this week. We'll be firing up the chiller. And we're happy to see that that project has come to fruition and that we've been granted this grant. We've got some ideas on the direction we'd like to go in with these funds, continuing to strengthen the work that Mike Zirkel's been doing with energy conservation. We're looking at some technologies that we think can be game changer for the district in terms of savings, battery bank opportunities that we're working through now. We've started putting the numbers into the models to see what the payout is and if it makes sense for the district. So we're glad to have some seed money finally to start to push the envelope and truly live on the bleeding edge of technology when it comes to the efforts in energy conservation.
Okay, thank you. I'll take any questions or comments from the committee members. Is it Glenn? Jelen?
Gellin?
I've heard 4 different ways of saying it, so you just say it for the record.
For the record, is Gellin. But Jelen is okay. It's French, but no questions from me.
Okay. I just have a comment. I think it's great work. That's almost in $1 million grant. That doesn't have to come from the Board of Education. And just for the public, this is the first time we're getting this grant, correct?
Yes, and the good thing is that there's another opportunity in August that we're going to be working on. So we're going to follow the same model that we use for this one, a project that's already going through its process now, which is the Batala chiller. So we feel confident that we'll be able to secure that grant also. That'll be around 1.2 million, I believe, that we'll be going after.
And then also, I'm so sorry, I forgot to acknowledge that board member Joseph Kolovic is here in attendance. And he also has a question, so I'm going to acknowledge it.
Yes, this is the same grant rounds that was open to all districts, and I know a couple of districts got like $8 million, a few more than us. How many grants did we apply for?
We applied for this single grant in this round, and we'll be applying for Batala. We've got so many different things going on at one time that it's tough to focus all of the attention on that one grant. We're also working on a DOE grant that's about 2.7 million and a host of others. We've got a UI grant that we're working on. So we wanted to make sure that we submitted a grant that we felt confident that would get awarded, because there's a lot of work that goes into the grants. And right now it's just me and Michael on behalf of the facilities.
Absolutely. So this next round of grants, when does it expire?
I'm not sure of the date, but I can get that from the grant champions.
Because if it would be feasible to maybe hire, to get somebody temporarily to go after some of these additional grants, if the only thing is the time consumed filling out these grants, I think it'd be more profitable, because seeing as smaller districts are getting $8 million and we're only getting one. If we could hire a temporary grant writer to just hit these grants, it might be very beneficial for the district. Does that seem feasible, or am I missing something?
So the DAS grant is kind of, it has a lot of requirements that go along with it. So the state, what was that? And it also had to be city funded. One of the issues with the DAS grant is that there are a lot of requirements. So, we're really working hard to turn around the systems in the district. And until we have those systems dialed in to the point that Tisdale will be, it's difficult because we have to have certain amount of CFMs running through, ensuring air quality and other things. So it's difficult right now because we're still working through getting these systems up to, top shape. So that's why Batala falls right in line with this, because Batala will be just like Tisdale, dialed in. We spent, we're going to be not only doing the chiller, but we're also going to be doing the controls. So once we do the controls, now we could dial in all the way down to the classroom temperature.
So if I could provide some additional information. I'm sorry, Mr. Sokolovic. Please go ahead.
Again, I was going to actually ask for some input as well.
Go ahead, Ms. Clark.
Yes, thank you. I was just going to explain that this particular grant was opened by the state. They had a lot of restrictions, so it's not that we're not looking for grants or opportunities. This particular grant was a reimbursable grant. They went back in time to some extent. They needed the work to be 100% completed. It just so happens that a lot of the other school districts that you would see a mass amount of money being, paid out to them, they were completely finished with their projects and were able to submit all of the things that were needed. In our case, we were midstream with one of our programs, and that's why we'll be doing our application. And the one that was funded for the amount that we outlaid our monies that we could get reimbursed for, that's why we received those monies. So it's not that we're not looking for the opportunities. We could only submit based on that particular program for reimbursable costs.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that explains it a little better, because I was under the impression that we didn't have enough people, but I'm still sure the grants office is pressed and not able to grab every single grant that's effective, and that's what it sounded like in the initial conversation. But there's no doubt on anybody's work ethic or work product. This is just work capacity.
Correct. In this particular case, it was really that we needed to have all of these completed projects for them to reimburse us. I am not going to deny we certainly could use additional people to go after every single thing that's happening. We are going after as much as we can, but as Mr. Garcia indicated, capacity. So you work with a department and it's what can they lay their hands on and help with, because the grants office, we're the administrative subject matter expertise. We need those departments to work with us and deliver information so we can help, craft those applications for them. And it's wonderful working with the facilities team. They're committed to what they're doing, as are all departments, but it is a matter of, capacity at the end of the day for their subject matter experts to give us information. For this particular grant, it really was reimbursable. And once the work was finished, we could ask for that money back.
Awesome. And the next round of grants is the same situation?
So yes, so we will have Battaglia completely finish.
Yes.
Team?
We should be very close once we have to start doing the grant. Once we have to start providing the details for the grant.
And
We've already started getting the information together at the office. So.
And how far is the look back for completed projects?
So I believe they were going back to 2021. I can pull the information if you give me a couple of minutes. We would have finished Tisdale, I believe, in Mr. Garcia. You have the date?
I do not confirm.
Yeah, that's fine. Just a curiosity and to see. Is there any possibility of double dipping on the grants, like get reimbursed and reshift another grant somewhere else on any other projects that we're completed? That's probably a Marlene question.
So,
For sure. For
double
sure.
dipping is not the right word here, so it's reimbursable. Knock, knock, knock.
I got you. That's the only word I could think of. Yeah, any formally reimbursed under another grant that can have those funds redistributed by covering it under this grant. Yes, that was very bad verbiage. Thank you.
So we have made every effort to clear and put charges on funding availability on where they could, so we could submit for our reimbursement under this program without any issues having the backup information, et cetera.
Thank you so much. That's all.
And we'd just like to thank Grants for all their efforts. We've been working diligently with them. Joan and Nadir have been tremendous to work with. The good thing is that we've been working on so many different grants that we're starting to build a database of the kind of information that'll be useful moving forward and sort of cut down the amount of time it takes to share information to start to lock these grants in. So thank you, guys.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other questions or comments from the board, committee? Okay, well, kudos, good work. I had the opportunity last month to tour the facility and to meet the staff and all the hard work that's coming in. And I think we've discussed this in finance, is that once we know the magic to writing a particular grant and being able to obtain it, being able to obtain the next one should be a lot easier. So we're going to move on to the next item on the agenda, which is ESSER plan discussion, possible action regarding how to move forward with the remainder ESSER funds and the facilities master plan, discussion and presentation on the roadmap for the district.
Okay, so as we start to get closer to the end of ESSER, we've got to make some decisions. The last administration had wanted us to explore the options of putting AC in Columbus School and at Cross School. So we've completed the design work, all of the engineering's complete. We started working through the scheduling and budgets. The schedules for these projects does not align itself with the end of ESSER. Both projects are long-term projects that really fall under construction, and we feel that we need to look at this from a different lens. The good thing is that now we have 2 shovel-ready projects with all the designs in, budget numbers, a good understanding of what it's going to take. But these are 12 to 24-month projects. The other issue on top of that is that's the construction time of the projects. The lead time on chillers, boilers right now are anywhere from 40 to 58 weeks just to get the product in, and then we start construction. So we just don't have the time frame to be able to execute these projects to meet the ESSER grant. The good thing is that we had contingency plans if, we couldn't do these projects. So we had started working on what's next. We feel strongly about the direction that we're going in and stabilizing the district. It was a struggle for us to say, okay, we're going to put a new AC in a building, and then we have schools that are struggling and have issues, and we're having issues with ACs. So what we like to do with the remaining $7.6 million is move in the direction of stabilizing the district further. We feel that we need to make sure that we're on strong footing, so when the fiscal cliff hits, that we can continue to operate and utilize our maintenance staff to keep these systems going, as opposed to what we're doing now, which is a lot of repair and replacement. So some of the activities that we would like to continue on and explore through ESSER is carry out. We'd like to replace the air handling units and a chiller on the rooftop of carry out. They've had struggles with their AC over the last couple of years. We've got engineering done on this project. Actually, we have the mechanical designs in. We're reviewing. Once we review the mechanical designs and we feel comfortable with that, we could put a bid set together. We could get this stuff out to bid. We can create a budget at that time along with a schedule. We think that schedule should meet what we need to do. We looked for products that don't have that exorbitant lead time. Because it's a replacement versus new construction, the schedule time for us to get that done is reasonable, and we can meet that within the ESSER guidelines. Another project that we're looking at is The HVAC system in the pool area of JFK, we've had humidity issues. You know, we're changing out 2 heat pumps right now. The pool has been down. The heat pumps are in now. We're working through finalizing that project, and we're revamping that area, understanding that we had to decommission Blackham's pool because of the infrastructure and the tunnels there. And this is the last pool that we have in the school district. So we want to make sure that we elevate the aesthetic of the pool. Yes.
Mike. Oh,
So I hear you mention the JFK campus. I know that they had temperature issues over there with hot and cold up and down, one area too hot, the other area. So is that what you're talking about now?
Well, right now
stabilize
we've sort of stabilized JFK. We have some pockets of issues that we're dialing in now. We have converted over the control system. We've been working closely with the principals in both schools. The good thing is the complaint calls are down. We're able to start to focus in now because now we can actually control a good portion of that system in the building. And that's the goal for the district, for us to have that ability to really dial in and work with the administrators at the school level to start to control those classrooms.
One last question, I'm sorry. So how does the connection to 6-to-6 magnet impact what you're doing? Is that whole system connected? Because I thought that's what they told me. They said, you know, you're connected to 6-to-6. And so when you do something at multicultural, you know, it affects them and vice versa.
The buildings are linked, but our control systems for our buildings and our individual classrooms are not linked to 6-to-6. We provide 6-to-6 hot water for heating and chilled water for air conditioning as more of a utility. They control their own systems within the 6-to-6 building.
So that work is ongoing, but we're making tremendous gains there. We've taken a very hard look at JFK, and we're really focusing in to make that campus what it needs to be. And this is a part of that work. So right now we're working through the mechanical design, should be done hopefully by the end of next week for that project. There's a portion in there for dehumidification because we have humidity issues in there. We want to get control of that. We don't want to rot out all of our infrastructure like what happened over at Blackham. So that's a project that we have that we're working through now. We're looking to replace 10 boilers district-wide. Once again, the big infrastructure pieces that we can't get our hands on that kind of money fast enough when there's a catastrophic issue. So we want to focus now while we have the time on the off season to start working through that. You know, HVAC controls district-wide, that's an effort that we want to continue. So now, you know, for instance, we may have control to the main air handler units. We'd like to take that further and get into the classrooms once again and be able to dial in those classrooms individually. There's a savings in energy conservation efforts through that, but also, you know, making sure that the end user in those buildings is comfortable. You know, we had an issue out at Skane where we had a steam leak, and now we have to look at what we're doing with the flooring. The flooring has gotten a bit unstable. We've been able to stabilize it for now, but we're looking to abate and remove the asbestos tile that currently is encapsulated so it's safe. But, you know, long term, we feel we need to make this modification to the building now before we have an issue. So we're looking to abate and retile the whole entire corridor at Skane, for instance. You know, then there's exterior door replacements, Marin, JFK, tightening up the envelope because we're losing a lot of cooling and heating in these buildings because the envelope is not tight. And then we've done a renewal of the chillers, one of the chillers out at Fairchild Wheeler. These are monster chillers. You know, that facility is huge and it's got a chilled beam system, so it's very finicky. So we want to make sure that we ensure that these chillers are running properly because we can lose bearings and other things. And those items, because of that being an exotic HVAC system, are really hard to get our hands on. So we want to do a renewal of the second chiller. The renewal is really stripping the entire chiller, putting all new components in it, and then recertifying it so we get a 5-year warranty. You know, and then we have contingency plans if there's still money left as we work through these projects. Some of those is continuing to remove asbestos and replacing floor tile. And then, you know, if there is additional funding at the end of all of that, we can replace playgrounds as part of ESSER also. You know, with that fiscal cliff, we got to think of the main infrastructure, the big pieces. You know, we can sort of work through smaller items with our maintenance staff, but these items that we're looking to replace are critical to continue to move the district forward.
Thank you. I'll open up the floor first to committee members. Mr. Benahan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Garcia, thank you for the report. But, and can you go back and, so you want to tell me that Columbus School and Cross, how, like, as of when is it going to be fixing the AC? Because I know.
So currently,
I know it's a process. I understand everything you said, but yeah, I'm worried about that.
So currently there are no ACs in either school. So we literally have to do complete construction. That means that we've got to get the children out of the school while we do construction. We were trying to find a way to keep the population in the school, just the time frame and the scheduling of all of this, because we have to do so many penetrations in the building, and the building's made of block, both buildings, that there's no feasible way for us to keep the children in the building. So what we'd like to do here is we feel that this is something that we should go to the DAS like we do for school construction and modifications to buildings. And then at that point, the city will have to fund a portion of the project. You know, it could be 40%, it could be 20% funded by the city, and then the state will pick up the rest. But it gives us the ability to bring a construction manager in. There's a lot of regulatory pieces that go into this project, so it's a little bit out of scope for us. So the good thing is that we have designs in. You know, we can turn this over quickly, you know, but it's something that right now it's just not feasible for us, fortunately.
Yeah, no, I understand. It's much better to work without no students, no staff, and nobody inside the building, because I know how they did.
Yes.
The way they did the school. The question, when you said 10 boiler had to be replaced, how much it costs each boiler to be replaced?
The estimates right now with bonding is right around $190,000 a boiler, each boiler. That's with asbestos removal if needed, bonds, and the boilers themselves and the installation. But we're going with high efficiency can boilers. So there's a reimbursement of about $10,000 from the utility. So we work closely with UI when we're doing these programs. You know, we've been doing the LED lighting upgrade. We've been able to work with UI to give us the opportunity to put in those projects as comprehensive projects when we add elements, which is good because it gives us the reimbursement. So we're looking at about a $10,000 reimbursement per boiler that we do. About $100,000 in savings that the city, the Board of Ed will receive a check for each.
Thank you. No more question, Madam Chair.
Mr. Jelen? Did I do that right again? Sorry.
Jelen, Gellen.
Welcome.
No tomato.
No, but we'll stick with Gellen. It's easy.
Gellen,
It goes
okay.
right off the tongue. All right. I just wanted to just ask a couple of questions about the boiler. The boiler the thermal boilers you're replacing. How is the function currently with the boilers? Is it like dead, or does it need to be replaced? Does it have 2 years left, a year left, 5 years?
So all of the boilers that we're looking to replace are really on their last leg. You know, some of these boilers are 25, 30 years old. We have one boiler that's currently tagged out at Columbus School, so that'll be one of the first ones that get replaced. You know, we want to ensure that there's redundancy in these buildings. You know, for us, we don't want to shut a school. You know, our team will work hard to make sure that we do not shut schools down in catastrophic failure. But, you know, we also understand that there needs to be that capital outlay, you know, so, you know, with ESSER, it gives us the ability to give shock therapy to the district. But, you know, the other piece of that is that, you know, we have to work closely with the city to make sure that they're funding the capital in a way that makes sense for us to sustain long term. The good thing is that I did meet with the city's budget appropriations committee. They called me in last second to discuss the capital stuff that we had submitted. So, you know, I feel comfortable that they're gonna do the right things. They asked a lot of good questions in terms of infrastructure in the buildings. So I think folks are focused now on the needs of the district, which is great. You know, we want to ensure that these boilers are operational, because the biggest issue for us is that something goes down, we just can't get these parts nowadays, you know, and the vintage boilers that we currently have in some of the schools, we have to have the parts manufactured. So it's even a longer lead time for us because we have some ancient boilers in these schools.
So, no, you were gone.
Sure. Just to be clear, so if the boiler is currently at a critical state, does that mean it has to be changed immediately?
Yes,
Okay.
so most of the boilers that we're looking at to swap out now are, I mean, it's tough to put how much time we have left. But, I mean, there's not much life left.
Okay.
We've exceeded the useful life of them at this point.
So are there any schools that will potentially hit the critical mark as you described in the next maybe 2 to 3 years and that you're not considering changing at the moment?
I think we're comfortable with the 10 at this point. I think that if we're able to get through the whole entire list of 10, you know, that's when these capital plans moving forward are critical, and we'd have to fight to make sure that, you know, the city understands that this is not something that we're asking for. This is a need.
Okay.
So, you know, the goal for us is that we'll start to build the documentation on every school. We'll create a bio for all of the different components in the building that are now at their end of their useful life. We've got a range when it comes to how old these buildings are. CSA is the oldest school in the district that's over 130 years old, and then we have Harding that's, you know, 5-6 years old. So we've got every textile, every manufacturer under the sun, but our focus is on the older schools. We're trying to close the delta on those buildings that have age on them.
The reason why I'm asking, I was considering if you purchase additional boilers if possible, just in case we can't get the funding in a couple of years. But
So the good thing is that
I'm not sure if
KN
that's allowed with ESSER, but just kind of the question.
Yep. So the good thing is with ESSER, if, you know, we found some economies in the work that we're doing and we have additional funding, KN, the manufacturer that we're working with, has committed to turn over boilers at a minimum of 2 a month if needed. So we can move quickly. And if we see that, you know, we can continue to make gains and that there's additional needs, then we'll continue to push the envelope on that. The good thing is that I'm back 2.5 years now. Year 1 was exploratory of understanding where the headaches are. This off season for AC, we started working on AC, on controls. So we move into the season a little stronger than we were. Now that we're in the shoulder season, we're sort of recalibrating. As we move into the cooling season, we start wholeheartedly working on repairs on heating. So we're trying to stay 1 season ahead now. So we'll start to do more exploratory work once we start to get towards halfway through this list. And if there's other opportunities to continue to add boilers, we will.
And I noticed that you have a bullet for the asbestos. Is any health concerns at the moment?
We've got a very tight loop on asbestos. So we have a environmental person on staff. So if there's any concerns, we send them out immediately. You know, we work closely with the state. The good thing is that we've kept a good cadence on removal and replacement of tile. We're moving from a VCT tile to a LVT, which doesn't need to be stripped and waxed. Another green element that we're adding, trying to strengthen the indoor air quality in school. But currently, the only concern we have is that we want to get ahead of SCADE before it becomes an issue. So that's why we feel strongly about doing this work this summer. We've already started drafting letters to the state that, you know, we're going to be undertaking this work. We started getting all of the documentation in place so we can hit the ground running early in the summer. So the thing with asbestos is that we have tight windows of opportunity because we have to do it when there's no one in the building. So, you know, for summer, it's typically 2 weeks after school ends, and then the program start, and at the end of the program, and then 3 weeks before school starts. And then every shutdown, we typically take on smaller projects because we want to keep the ball moving and continue to get asbestos out of our buildings. So we're making tremendous gains. ESSER has helped us tremendously to stabilize. But, you know, wherever we can continue to move the ball there, we want to. And we want to move to LVT because it brings down the need for full-time employees, and it's a greener technology.
And one last question. I see this could be a huge undertaking. You have enough staff, or you hiring contractors? How does that work?
So the last 2 years, year 1, we did 75 projects in the summer. Last year, we did 125. So we realized that 125 is probably our ceiling, and I'll never do that to my staff again. They did a tremendous job of closing everything out and getting the work done, and I tip my hat to them. This year, we're moving in a different direction. We're bringing more outside contracting. and we're focusing in on doing all of our work orders. So we want to clean out all the maintenance work orders because we feel that we want to start the school year strong. We want to have a good understanding. We want to be able to run you guys monthly reports on exactly where we are when it comes to all of the maintenance work that's happening, how many work orders were open, how many were closed, any areas of concern that we're seeing, tracking all of that data. We're automating all of that stuff so we can now print you a report every single month so you guys get a cadence of what's going on. But we are short-staffed. When I was here last, we had 186 custodians. Currently, we're budgeted at 160. Due to the environment of trying to hire folks, we're probably in the 140s. We interview sometimes 5 to 10 people a week. We're lucky if we find one. We're not going to settle because we understand that we need to have folks that want to come to work and do that work. We're working hard to create a good work environment for them through training, certification. We've offered first aid, OSHA 10. We want to build a workforce that if they decide to move on, we want to support that because if we're breeding the best, then we're doing a good job. But we want to ensure that folks are happy about coming to work. But we are short. On the trade side, we had 33 in the past. We're down to about 19 and a half. No, 20 now. So it's a big undertaking for us. We have good relationships with outside contractors, thank God. So if we have emergencies, we can call folks in the middle of the night and get folks on site. And it shows in the fact that we've had some catastrophic failures and we were still able to open school. I think we lost 3 days last year due to issues. We had one main water line that failed on us. We had a boiler that went down, and then the other one was on the fence. We're doing a repair. We probably could have got through it, but we erred on the side of caution.
Thank you.
Mr. Benahan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going back what Mr. Gerlin said about the boiler, and I'm very glad you're trying to fix that because I know sometimes when they old and order the piece, they forget it. I can give an example, Mr. Gerlin, when sometimes the elevator from Bassett High School broke or something like that, take months to bring that little piece to fix it. We got people, we got teachers, we got students, they're handicapped. So you can imagine how difficult for them, and it's much better to update, like you say. Now all this boiler, to have a new one. I know they cost a lot of money, but we don't want later wait months and months. And sometimes they say, yeah, we're gonna have it, let's say in 3 months. And then after 3 months, they say, oh, I don't have it. And then the school's still cold. So, it's much better to, we appreciate that, to have everything done before, the school start again, to have update. And I know you always handle that.
The biggest issue is that we have a lot of original equipment. So we've got buildings that are 60, 70 years old working off of original equipment, original infrastructure. As we have opportunity, we want to make sure that, we're getting a good return on that investment.
Any further questions? Mrs. Kolovic?
Yes, a couple of questions. We mentioned something about 6 to 6, which is a state school, and we're providing 2 things for them. Are we getting reimbursed for that?
Yes. Yeah. So we send them bills twice a year.
Okay. So we're not in a position to afford any charity to other districts or programs other than our own schools. I just want to make sure that's clear on every issue. It's going to be all encompassing theme you're going to hear running throughout my conversations on every committee. Okay, now Fairchild Wheelers chillers. Refresh my memory. The first time we went out for chillers, was it because we had an insufficient amount of chillers, or because one chiller went down?
One of the chillers went down.
So this is the second chiller in the 10 years that the building's been open. Is that an unusual fail rate?
Well, right now the renewal that we're doing on this chiller is purely based on us making sure that we don't have another failure. So what this does is it gives us another 5-year warranty on that chiller. Okay. And our goal is to do it again 5 years from now, so we don't have these issues. Because one of the things that we're really diligent on now is preventative maintenance. We need to ensure that we're doing everything we can to support this infrastructure. Because if we don't, we're just going to have failure after failure. So being that system is what it is, being chilled beam, we want to ensure that we don't have to dig deep into this one. Because if we do, we're talking millions.
Right. Yeah. Makes sense, but it's just concerning that a 10-year-old building is needing this kind of
I agree.
investment.
Yeah, and once again, you know, we probably, in hindsight, we probably shouldn't have gone with Chill B. Should have went with something more traditional, something off the shelf. But, you know, they were looking
Right.
for LEED, and we did get LEED Gold in the building.
Right, so yes, speaking of the lead and the innovative technologies being used, we've got one of those coming up being used in the Bassick facility. Are we gonna run into some of those same problems in Bassick?
We were concerned. So at the new Bassick, there's going to be a thermal loop attached. At one point, they discussed pulling the 3 boilers out of the program. Well, if there's one lesson we've learned is that we are not going to allow folks to toy with the original theory of design when it comes to the mechanical infrastructure. The biggest issue is that when you start to run low on funds in the construction program, you start to value engineer things, and it's easy to value engineer infrastructure because no one sees it. Our architects never going to change the undulation of a building, but they'll downsize the chiller like we've done in the past. So the reason why we're changing the chiller at Tisdale and Batalla is because they were undersized. They were sized for 60, 70% of the building. They're starting to have more heat waves and the need for longer stints of cooling. So what ends up happening is you're taxing these systems and we're just burning them out at a rate that, you know, is not sustainable. So what we're doing now as we replace, we're replacing with chillers that make sense for the size of the building. So now we'll have better control. That, along with us investing in the controls themselves, give us the ability to modulate the system better. So now we're cycling things in a way where we have control. And now we put that on a maintenance program and there's longevity and sustainability.
The initial plan for Columbus Cross is not feasible because, I'm gonna integrate 2 questions. Columbus and Cross not feasible because of the time the students would have to be away and being part to do, and also with the asbestos tight timeline.
Yes.
Can all of this be mitigated with having a swing space? And that is because we're coming up on new construction and it might be feasible to try to keep a portion of the building and repair it for a swing space, because currently we don't have a swing space.
So yes, a swing space is going to be important. You know, I would love to see the district and the city work together, and we'll talk about that through the facilities master plan to reinvigorate a new construction program. The construction program is coming to an end with the completion of Bassick, which will be 2025. The investments will exceed $1 billion, so it was a successful program, but there's a lot of work to be done. You know, we've got a lot of buildings that are at the point where they need to be either renovated as new, or we need to move on and start to build new buildings. But programs like AC for Columbus and Cross, those should be part of that program, where we're going to the state and the DAS and we're putting that in front of the school building committee for management, because there's so many moving parts. For me and Mike to try to take that out with a consultant, consultants are great, but you still have to spend a lot of time with a consultant. So it really doesn't help. When you have a team like school building committee and a CM and a superintendent on site, that ensures efficiency and ensures that the program is going to be run properly. And it gives us a sense of surety that we're going to be in good shape once the project is done.
Awesome, thank you. Nothing further.
Most of my questions were answered. The only one remaining was, aside from Columbus School, what would be the 2 schools, the remainder 9 schools for the new boilers?
I don't have the list with me. I know we're doing Columbus, CSA, Discovery. I should have bought that list. Marin. Madison. We'll get you that list.
Yeah, I was gonna say, carry on.
I don't know why I didn't grab it. I looked at it, but I didn't grab it.
Okay. And that was the rest of the committee members and board members in attendance answered. Dr. Morgan, do you have any comments? Okay.
I have one additional question.
Oh, Mr. Gellin.
Thank you. You got it right. There you go. Right on the money. Just a follow up with the chiller. Is the chiller completely decimated? Is not working anymore? That's we need to replace, or is just the fact that it can't provide the necessary cooling for the building size?
So the Tisdale chiller was down. We have 2 chillers at Batalla. One is down. We're replacing that. At Fairchild Wheeler, one of the chillers was down. We did the renewal, thank God. We were able to get that one up and going. We have a new year 5-year warranty. And then this second chiller that we're doing, we just want to ensure that we have that 5-year warranty in hand and that we're going to get a priority if something does happen.
Any of the chillers, so you're replacing chillers, the one that is actually being removed, can we, are we selling it to maybe another location? Is it
They're
not in good shape? Okay, all right. So we're selling the parts? All right, all right.
Good reason.
I want to make sure if you could probably get some funds.
Yep,
somehow.
And we look at that angle. We're big on reuse.
Mr. Benahan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Garcia, why always Columbus, not Columbus School, Cesar Batalla have problem with the children?
Caesar Batalla.
Anyone I know and before as a board member always have some issue. That school's not too old. They always have something new. They have to do this. They have to do that. Spend money. Why the reason they always have issue? But I don't, because that school's not too old like other ones. What is the problem with that? With that?
Terrible design.
Okay, got it.
So that school was the first school of the school building construction program. I think everyone was still, you know, we haven't had a school construction program before that outside of maybe 1 or 2 modification projects. And the size of that building, the cabinets, hallways and everything, the design of the original intent of the mechanical design was changed due to budget issues, right? So once again, you've got to be able to fight that fight, which we do now because the boilers in the thermal loop at Bassick, we have those boilers in that program. They wanted to pull those boilers out. And we said, there's no way you're taking them out. We need redundancy. And then in further investigation, the amount of hot water that's going to be coming through the thermal loop, we don't feel is going to be sufficient anyway. So we were able to keep those 3 boilers in the program. If we didn't fight for that, we'd be having the same problem we're having at Batalla right now. So now we understand that we have to make sure that we maintain that theory of design. In Batalla, you had undersized chillers. They tried to do ice storage, which did not work. And then the controls were not sufficient. So we're working through all of that now to ensure that moving forward, we have a better grip, we have a maintenance plan, and that things should start to stabilize. We started making modifications to help the school. So hopefully this summer, as we work through the chiller program, the chiller that's running doesn't give us an issue because we are running on 1 chiller right now. Well, we will be running on 1 chiller right now.
Wow, because I know that school, let's see, first floor, something is cold, second floor is hot. And then one room, let's say this room is cold, the next room is hot. Something like, you know, it's like you said, the way they did it, whatever, put the pipe, whatever they did is terrible. And I feel bad for the staff and the teachers, you know, the students suffering because it's bad.
Well, one of the things that,
especially when the sun hit the window and you don't have no AC, something like that, they don't have to cover that big window, it's the worst.
so one of the things that happened was they unified several schools under one head end, which is a problem. Because if you start having issues on that one head end, you have multiple schools that have issues. And then when you're trying to dial out or you're trying to gain access to another system, we've had none but issues. So this is why that control work that we're doing is vital to the whole entire program, because now we have more control. We've been working closely with IT. They're giving us virtual servers for each. So now we have some redundancy. We have independence within those buildings. So we feel that we're moving in the right direction. And as we continue to dial these things in, listen, we're going to find problems, right? Because there hasn't been a sustained investment in the school district when it comes to the facilities end for a long time. It's hard for the school district to carry those costs because they're capital costs. So we have to work closer with the city to make sure they understand the heartaches that we have. So when we do get that capital outlay, it's moving the ball. So what we're doing is we're providing that stable foundation, and moving forward, hopefully we can start to work closely together to ensure that when there are things that are starting to come to the end of their life, we're addressing those up front.
It's the same way we have in our home that something wrong in the house, the alarm go on and they go notify you on the cell phone. Something's wrong with the children, they send in the middle of the night, something like that, and you know, they send you, do you have an app or something, they let you know, listen, this school have this problem, they should, you know, off. So you guys be prepared, go in the morning to figure out what they can do?
So we're going to have alarms set up. We're working right now. We're doing 7 chillers this summer through part of the program through ESSER. And we're going to be adding backnet cards. Those backnet cards will be tied into the control system, and there'll be a series of alarms from you know, small issues to larger issues. What that BACnet card with the technology does is it helps us focus in on exactly what the problem is. Because currently, right now, we have to go out and do an investigation. As you can imagine, when you do an investigation when it comes to HVAC, there's thousands of sensors in a building. So it's very difficult sometimes to put your hands on exactly what the issue is. So with the technology and the direction we're moving in, now we'll have a lot more understanding what's going on, and we could be proactive as opposed to reactive, and we could be a lot more efficient in how we're deploying. And there's also the opportunity for us to solve some of the problems in the office. So Mike has been able to solve a lot of issues utilizing his desktop in the office, where in the past, we'd have to send someone out to log onto the computer on site. Hopefully we had connectivity and there's no issues. But now we're starting to do a lot more things remotely.
The one notify you or the one notify the head custodian? Something's wrong.
Notifies us.
Okay.
And then we'll work with the head custodian if he needs to come in, and we deploy staff, we deploy contractors, depending on the gravity of the issue.
No more question, Madam Chair.
Are there any other questions or comments from the board? Dr. Morgan? Okay. So this agenda is discussion, it's missing the and, it should be and possible action regarding on how to move forward. I will say, Mr. Garcia, how comfortable are you with the backup plan? So that includes the JFK campus, the boilers, the Fairchild, as being presented to the full board to go forward with at this time versus the Cross and Columbus original plan?
We feel comfortable with working down this list and completing as many projects up into the 7.6 million and satisfying the grant requirements. So we're hopeful to get through all of this, but we will get as far down this list as we possibly can. And then we will continue to work with the city or through grants to address and identify funding for the other items. So that's why we're working closely with the grants department. For instance, we're working on a Department of Energy grant right now for $2.7 million. UConn is a partner with us and UI. So they're working alongside the grants department to start to put that together. But we see that the relationship with UConn is very important to us because we want to draft the 5-year energy plan. And we also want to draft a 5-year maintenance plan that makes sense for the district based around the infrastructure that we're replacing now. The theory that we have is creating smart schools. So, we're looking at the potential of 4 schools that we're going to tie in every sensor. So now we have a granular view on what's going on, a more focused view on what's happening in that facility, down from the lighting to the heating to the cooling to the energy consumption. So now we have an understanding if there's any gains that we can make. So if modulating the chiller saves us money, then we're going to work on getting that done. If we can control the lighting when there's no occupants a little more succinctly and there's a savings there, that's how we're going to be able to move the ball, because it's tough for us to say we need more in our budget. We do, but we also understand that there's a fiscal cliff coming. So everything that we're doing is trying to set us up to have some sort of opportunity to keep fighting.
Mrs. Sakala, do you have any questions?
I'm looking ahead to the next slide.
Okay. So at this time, I'll entertain a motion to approve the possible action plan as presented. So let's switch over to utilize our remaining $7.6 million of ESSER funds to the following operations: carry out JFK 10 boiler replacements, the HVAC controls to continue district-wide, the Skane asbestos abatement, exterior door replacement at Marin and JFK, and the Fairchild Wheeler renewal chiller 2.
I second that.
You move it?
Move it. Move.
It's been moved by Mr. Benahan. I'll second it. Is there any further discussions, questions, comments? Mr. Skolvik?
Just quick question. You're moving to present this to the full board?
Yes, it's going to be presented to the, oh yeah, of course.
Yeah.
That is always implied with committee level. We don't make executive decisions, decision up to 9. So yes, it would be presented to the full board for complete approval. So this would just pass the committee level. Any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, we'll take the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any oppositions? Any abstentions? Hearing none. the motion passes. It will be presented to the full board. I would have to look on the calendar when that's going to be, but we're going to move forward with it to present to the full board.
Thank you.
Okay, switch screens. All right, the next item on the agenda. You know what? That is a twofold item, which may have been a typo error, but facilities master plan. The presentation and the discussion presentation, did we hit on that as far as like our future goals?
No, but I'd love to touch on this because I think this is going to be vital with all of the work that we've done, and then moving forward, having a plan. So the last time we had an update to the facilities master plan was 2013. I believe that the last time a facilities master plan was done was around 2008, so it is time. The facilities master plan that was done at that time was really the driver of the school construction program that we're completing now. So it's time for us to start to circle our wagons, regroup, get a better understanding of our condition of buildings, the migration of students throughout the district, our occupancy in terms of the usage of these buildings. It really gets a good, clear picture of everything that's going on in the district. A facilities master plan will work through every single department in the district to give us a clear and concise roadmap as to the direction that we need to take with our facilities and a better understanding of where our pinch points and our heartaches are. With that facilities master plan and the work that we've done, it really ties that all together because now we can see what our investments are and have a clear understanding of what we need to do next from a maintenance level, from a school construction level. And then this helps us when we go to the city and we look for capital funding because we have this data that really is in black and white for everyone to digest and understand. Several towns have started undergoing the facility master plan. Greenwich started theirs in 2018 or 2016. The price range, they had 3 bids come in. One was $240,000, one was $400 and change, and then the highest was $615. Trumbull is undergoing it now, I believe.
Yes.
So they're undergoing a facilities master plan. And then, the most important pieces of a facilities master plan is not only do we internally understand what the needs are, but we get to bring the community in to get an understanding of what they feel and what they're seeing in the building. Because one of the conversations I love to have is with parents to get an understanding of what it is that they feel when they walk into a building. Because I feel that's a very important aspect of what we do. For instance, JFK, the site had terrible pavement, so we've worked on that. They were having issues with popping tile. We've worked on that. Their HVAC system, controlling that was an issue. And there's a host of others. But a lot of the things that we have done at JFK, we've gotten that feedback from the parents through meeting with them. So this gives us the ability to formally have community outreach, which I feel is important moving forward. Folks want to be part of the decisions that are made for their children. The ed specifications that'll be used for school construction can be developed and drafted through this. It gives us the demographics, the enrollment projections, the capacity and utilization study. That is big for us. We've had that conversation at facilities because, as we look at the district, we have schools that are under enrolled. We have schools that are tipping at the maximum of enrollment. So we need to understand that. The facilities need assessment and maintenance schedules. To us, that is gold because, all the investments that we've made, we want to make sure that we capture all of that and build on that. Cost estimates and improvements. That's where, when we sit down with the city, we can have those facts and data for them to understand what we need in capital. And then the finance plan and investigation of potential funding sources. So that helps us look at the future perspective of what the Fed and the state will look to providing grants, the opportunities we have through reimbursement with the state, with school construction and the work done through the DAS. So there's a whole host of benefits to a facilities master plan. Funding is the big key here because it's not a small ticket item, but it's one of those things that the investment, we will see a return on investment on this. What we've done now is we had a district that we weren't really getting the kind of capital, the kind of capital to make substantial gains. We've given the district shock therapy at this point, but we need to formalize what we're doing now, you know? So as we start to finish ESSER, I feel it's a perfect time so we can start having bigger conversations and moving forward.
Thank you. I'll open up the floor to committee members first. Any questions or comments? Mr.
I have a comment.
Oh,
I just wanted to say, what I hear you saying is that you want to make sure that everything, whatever we have now, works before you begin any other big projects that add to that. For instance, the air conditioning at Cross. Before you get to that, you want to make sure that the boilers work, right? So that when the winter comes, you don't want to be working on air conditioning at Cross, which is a long project, when the boilers are falling apart, right? Is that what I'm hearing you say?
We
want to shore everything up.
We've gone and done a lot of major work. Now we want to fall back into our fundamentals to make sure that the investments we made now don't start to slip, because that can happen easily with a district this size. You know, once again, the goal this summer is to bring in outside resources to help with major projects and fall into a maintenance program. So we're taking the amount of work orders that we have in the system, and really, I want to get them to zero. That's the goal. We've never been able to do that, but that's the goal for this summer. And then when we start the school year, we have a lot better grip on what's going on moving forward. The facilities master plan really memorializes everything that we've done and that direction moving forward. And it puts dollars to it, because, you know, folks need to understand that we're not talking small dollars here. We're talking hundreds and millions and tens of millions of dollars. And there's times where in some buildings you could spend $10 million and you don't see it, because the infrastructure is at the level where you need complete replacement. And we're talking buildings that are, you know, 70 years old, that are made of glazed block and asbestos. So you start adding these things up, you know, we need a clear and concise picture. And the work that we've done has stabilized us for now, but we need to start to have that vision for the future.
Do you consider weather patterns? The reason I'm asking that, well, here's the reason why I'm asking that. I was interning in Fairfield,
Yep.
and there was a problem with the floors. Kids were coming in and they were falling all over the floors. It just so happened that summer happened to be really hot. And so the humidity, because of the humidity, and with the air conditionings and the humidity, the floors were getting wet. So I remembered when the superintendent addressed, you know, the board to figure out a solution, she actually looked at the weather patterns. And I say that because we have a lot of flooding here, and we've had a lot of rain, you know, this year. So I don't know if you consider that at all, or do a projection for, you know, a couple of months ahead sometimes.
So we're seeing that the summers are hotter. We're having a lot more heat waves. It's really taxing our systems. Once again, you know, you say, well, you know what? We're in New England, 60% capacity is plenty. And then we get into these heat waves that now we're taxing our systems. So yes, we try to ensure that moving forward, as we make a replacement, we're taking it into consideration. So we're not looking for taking a 60% capacity to 70. We want to get 100% capacity. So now, at least moving forward, we have a better foundation in terms of our environment. Now, the same issues that Fairfield had, we have had in Bridgeport, because you know, there's a lot of dehumidification and air and CFMs of air that are moving through these buildings, and controlling that is very, very important to the climate in the building. So, and for instance, in Barnum Waltersville, we had issues where the floors wouldn't dry when we waxed them over the summer, because there was so much humidity in the building. We couldn't get the humidity out fast enough. So me and Mike went to the drawing board. We started looking at the system and saying, okay, we need to go through this entire system from end to end, from every belt to every bearing to the energy wheels, to make sure that everything is done to ensure that we don't have this issue. So once again, the fundamentals of it, we ensure that that's right, and then we start to do the repairs and dial things in. But the reason why we're moving towards this model for this summer as opposed to the 125 projects is because now we want to dial into those maintenance issues and make sure that every belt is done, things are greased, you know, the filters are changed religiously anyway, but that, you know, there's nothing that's missed, and we're now reviewing and inspecting that stuff. We're putting a lot of things on systems and computerizing the department. So like that, now we have a better grip. So instead of having my managers running around town to see things, they could see things in the system through reporting And now we're deploying more efficiently and focusing on the issues a little bit more succinctly. There's a lot of work going on in facilities right now. And because we have such a small staff, we have to bring systems in that help control. But what I can say is that we have a dedicated staff of folks that really believe in what they're doing here. And thank God for that. I'm blessed with the team I have.
Done, Dr. Morgan? No problem. Mr. Benahan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Garcia, I know you said something of the work you do in the school is because you speak with the parents and parents tell you, you know, what's going on and you do investigate. You do the same thing with the staff? Because, you know, sometimes the staff, you know, they inside more in the room, they're more in the classroom, they know what's wrong. They will inform you, listen, Mr. Garcia, can you check this?
So one of the things that we do, and I was doing it daily with the teachers union, is that we communicate every morning. So if teachers had any issues, they'd report into the chair of the facilities committee for the BEA, and we would interact every morning. As Jeff Morris, I believe he's the president now, he's going to be the president of BEA. And for us, that was game changer. I walked into the district, we had 9, I believe, grievances. We were able to put them in abeyance, get those squared away, and we haven't had any grievances. I think we're going to get a grievance soon on maybe Blackham, but you know, we haven't had any grievances. But the reason behind that is because we were communicating. So we're understanding what's going on at the classroom level. It's tough for us to interact with every teacher. Parents are easy because you get them in a group and you have the conversation. We do meet with parents. If there's an issue in a building, I want to be the one that talks to the teachers. We've had mass meetings at Patala, Tisdale, Black Rock, to name a few. You know, because we need to understand what the issues are with the end user. Our whole entire operation is based on making sure that those folks come to work, do their job, not be distracted, and educate children. And that takes a lot of communication.
And second question, I know because some schools, classrooms very hot. And some teachers, they say, I like to bring in an AC. I like to bring this. I like that. And I tell them, listen, you have to be careful because the school is old. They're not going to take that power. So I just wanted you to let them know because, they asked that question.
So right now, a lot of the schools in the district are maxed out power-wise. There's a couple projects that we're looking to do potentially this summer to bring in more power. We've got some capital money to do that for Beardsley. We've done that at Blackham. We've done that at a host of other schools. But remember, these schools were built at a time where you didn't have all this technology. So you're bringing in all this technology. You're bringing in, everything under the sun that needs to be powered. So these buildings aren't wired for that. So that's where the issue is. Every time that we get an ADA request to put in an AC, because that's the only way we're putting them in, we have to do the calculations, check the amperage, make sure that we can support that. Because in some instances we can't because we're maxed out. There's parts of buildings that we can't add anything else. And there's parts of buildings that we may have the opportunity to. But there's a lot of instances where if everything's running at one time, breakers are popping. I mean, it's unfortunate, but that's where we are in the district.
Thank you. No more comments.
Any additional questions or comments? Mr. Skolvik?
Yes, first question, the 240 to 615,000 cost. Not opposed to it, but is not as operating from the operating budget.
I think it'll have to come from the operating budget, but it's worth a conversation with Marlene.
Yeah.
And maybe we try to partner with the city on this somehow.
Also, I would like to look at maybe expand.
Microphone, Mr. Skolvik.
I would also like to probably look at expanding upon it, because as we all know, we're going to have inadequate funding when this fiscal cliff comes. And we as a district are going to, I don't see a way around it. Last year was an election year for the governor. We got a $15,000 boost. This year was an election year for the mayor and the city council, and we're getting a $2.5 million boost when we asked for $16 million. So there's no doubt that next year and the year that the fiscal cliff hits, that they're going to come to the rescue, because those aren't election years for any of them. So we're on our own with this deficit. So I think we should probably utilize this process to look at closing as many schools and consolidating as many services as we need to, and keep as much of it out of the political arena as possible. Because as you know, before we tried, just recently we had a decision that might financially impact 100 people, might impact them, and the room was full. We're talking about decisions that are going to impact thousands and thousands of students and thousands of families. And I think if we could utilize a firm like this to basically do a overall view of everything within our budget, I mean, because we're basically at the worst case scenario now. There's nobody, I don't see anybody right into our rescue, and I don't see anybody really taking up the mantle to actually come help us out. So we need to have a clear plan to make these cuts, and I think this might be the vehicle for that. I mean, they'll be independent of the lobbyists of the city council. They'll be independent of all the phone calls we get when we say we need to make this cut or that cut. So is there any way to integrate more into this plan?
So through the facilities master plan, there will be a set of recommendations for the district. So some of that will be, decommissioning of schools based on conditions, or the fact that the migratory path of students has changed, and now a school that once was at 80% occupied is now 30% occupied. So all of those things will be captured in the facilities master plan. So you'll be able to memorialize what we should be doing as a district based on facts and data.
And can we get them to give us recommendations for which would be the most cost-effective closures to make?
That will be part of the facilities master plan. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any further questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, that fully captures, just checking. That fully captures agenda item number 3. We're going to now move on to agenda item number 4, which is a buildings report for Hall and Edison School.
So what we've done is, and the sad fact is that things haven't changed much in terms of condition, except for getting a little bit worse for Hall and Edison. We pulled the Carlo and Dow existing facilities condition surveys that were done, I believe, in 2008. So these studies pretty much capture everything that's going on in both facilities. I think both facilities are worth a tour to get a better understanding of exactly what's going on in them. It's tough to run a 21st century program in the schools due to the layout of the buildings. For instance, Hall has 3 floors. The only bathrooms in the building are on the bottom floor. So students on the top floor have to traverse all the way down to use the facilities. Neither building is ADA compliant. Host of issues, infrastructure, as you can imagine. At Hall School, for instance, we had a pipe collapse on the bottom floor due to wipes. And we had to literally dig a 5-foot trench in the hallway in the basement outside of the bathroom. When we did that repair, if the collapse was about 4 feet from where it was, we would have been able to get to it. We would have had to decommission the building at that time. The collapse continued out into the driveway. We had to dig a 20-foot pit to get to that one. So there's a host of issues there. The infrastructure is definitely on its last leg. Our position is that we don't really recommend the closure of schools, but we give you guys the facts and data of what the buildings look like in terms of condition. But these studies that were done back 15 years ago still ring true to the conditions today. And I think that tells the story in terms of where we are in those buildings. The sites aren't big enough to do a construction program on. The state has requirements for a certain amount of acreage. Neither building falls within that. If there was an investment made to either school, the investment would have to be made purely by the city of Bridgeport. We're talking investments of $20+ million at each building, and those are conservative numbers. But we have to have a serious conversation of what's next. The city is struggling with the fact that we have 5 to 6 buildings that are not ADA compliant, and the state is pushing back on releasing funding for school construction activities through the DAS. We had pushback when we did the Marin roof last summer. There was some pushback with the Bassett project because we need a commitment to sort of have a plan for these buildings that are not ADA compliant. There are laws that govern that. So we have to get to a point where we're making decisions based on the facts of where we are. And these two buildings are not ADA compliant. So, and when we look at them, we don't see a way that we can make them ADA compliant because of the layout. You know, we've got to be able to get to all spaces, and it's difficult because of the way that the buildings are laid out. And we're maxed out power-wise. So you're talking major work infrastructure-wise, and we can spend millions and really not feel the benefit, unfortunately. We're willing to take any questions. We thought that this would be more of a conversation because the studies are what they are and they're 15 years old.
Yeah, Mr. Benahan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm very glad, Mr. Garcia, you bring this because I already talked about this last year, and I know we had to update the schools because first of all, is the safety of our kids and our staff, especially with the parents. I know some parents and some staff say, oh, they're going to close whole school, oh, they're going to close Edison School, but they don't see how bad is the situation. They don't see how dangerous is the situation. And I really went to high school as a big guy that I am. If I go have to take the steps upstairs, I have to go side. I cannot go straight because the little step is like for babies. Baby step, especially if you say go to the bathroom. I see the gym. I feel bad. The principal look like she's in the closet, her office. The security, the same thing. You know, I feel when I walk to the door, the school, and I heard that step, the floor crack. I said, did I go to the basement? So imagine every time they pass, and I feel the security trying to do the best, the custodian trying to do the best. You know, it's terrible. But I want the parent to understand because you know more than us, and we know that they need to be update the schools, not update. They need to be new ones. You know, and I don't want the parents and the students and the community and the city say, oh, they want to close the school. Where are the children going to go? We know how to handle that situation. That's why we have an interim superintendent. They know to handle that situation, but they don't see how the safety, the situation. And I like to invite them with you, with the permission of the Ms. Perrin. All these people, they like to see how the school look like. They will be surprised because one thing they talk. And the other thing is they don't see what's going on, you know. And I feel bad with the staff. Sometimes the staff going to school, they say, "Oh my God, I feel bad. There's something's falling from the ceiling, or I'm going straight to the basement, or I twist my leg." You know, it's bad. I seen that person, and we need to update. You know, they need to do the best thing, you know, for our students. And as you say, if we're gonna renovate and try to fix the school, they're gonna cost not $1,000, $1 million, and then we're gonna waste that $1 million when we can use it to do a new school or something big. Two schools that can be together, and trust me, they will be much better for our kids because it's our kids. But sometimes they don't see that. They think, oh, board education gonna close the two schools. But I invite them one day with the permission, you know, the way they're supposed to be the policy and the protocol, to walk to the school, especially the city councils, when they start saying, oh, they're gonna close the schools. Board education gonna close the school. They don't care about, no, we care. That's why we're doing this. Because you know, Mr. Garcia, you're the professional one. Like I said, you're the master about how is the schools as best, you know, how to spend money, this, that, the pipe. I remember when it was the temperature was below, the pipe exploded like crazy, and it was a weekend. And I know your staff run at like it was a Saturday run to fix that problem. They don't see that. I see that. I know board members see that, but they don't see that. So why we have to spend more money, not money, $1,000 we can do something better. So I hope like you plan and you present and everything, and it'll be a process that we need to. They need to be closer to school and try to make something nice. I know it's a protocol, it's a policy, will it take time, stuff like that, but need to have something concrete. Like I said, this is what happened. And invite whoever complain and say, why they closing the school? Let's walk to the school. Let's show you what is the problem. Because as I say, we want the safety because we don't want later any parents, any staff, any students, whatever, gonna get sued because the safety of the school. So I'm very glad you bring this and we talk about this. This is about the third time I bring this. At least let's see, we can have something concrete. We can figure out what we can do for these two schools. No more comment question for now, Mr. Madam Chair. Thank you.
Like, if I can, one of the things that we do is, we believe in equity across the board. So, when we work on things at Hall or Edison or any school, we put in the same effort. The problem is that you can do a ton of work and you really don't feel it and you don't see it. We did a lot of pointing in that building. We literally have put that building back together since I've been back, because all of that brick has become a sponge, and most of the pointing on that building had to be redone. We had lentils that were sagging, that were being held by just the force of nature. So these are items that can become a major liability. It's a safety concern. We've stabilized things, safety first for us. So whenever we see something, we do what we have to do, and we've stabilized the building. But, once again, I always go back to that collapsed pipe. 4 feet, we wouldn't have been able to get to it, and that's what we're dealing with on a daily basis. We're just waiting for the next thing to cause an issue. And it's unfortunate, because I know that the staff and the students, love the building, and you have a dedicated staff there. But, we really have to think about where we are with our facilities.
We love the building. The building, like you said, Hall School's from 1914. We love the building. We love the history, stuff like that. But we have to think about the safety of the kids and the staff and everyone in the community. That's the most important thing. I remember when outside they trying to fix the playground. Me and Mr. Resto, we going to see it, and you was there to bring to fix it. How many $1,000 to fix that? I mean, $1,000 to fix the playground, So, it's a process. People, they don't see that. So I know they love the building. We love her. It's a history, but we have to think about the safety for everyone.
Any questions? From board members or committee members? I just have, I have a comment. So for Hall School, it states, where is it now? The last date of major renovation was 1939, like around the World War.
Unfortunately, yes. We've taken out more capital through operating at Hall School than probably any other school, just because, it constantly needs major work. And we do it, and we find other ways to make things work. But, there wasn't no major renovations or anything done at all, because the program, right? You look at the program and the things that students need now, it's difficult to run a 21st century program in some of these buildings. And those are the decisions that I think the facilities master plan will help hash out. So we have the facts and data, because it is a political thing, and folks feel strongly about those neighborhood schools. And I get it. My kids went to Beardsley School, so that's an old building. I feel strongly about it, but we need the facts and data to support those conversations. So I think this facilities master plan really dovetails into this, the investments we made through ESSER, and the future plans and the vision for what we need to do as a district. And and Edison is in the same. Edison's in a bit better condition than Hall, but it's another old building that really it struggles to provide a program that the kids need. And then you have a boys' room on one floor and a girls' room on another floor at Edison School. So they're just operational challenges.
At some point, it's an equity issue.
I agree.
Period.
I agree.
It is not right. When I see those students walking through those hallways, my heart sinks, because I think if this were my child, they wouldn't go there. They wouldn't go there. The building is crumbling. Let a hurricane, something come, just random hurricane come, and you have a problem. So I agree with Mr. Benahan. Sometimes, you have to do what's right, even when people don't want it done. I can't believe that the teachers actually love the building. They may like working there in that atmosphere, but the building itself, the facilities, it's not right, it's not fair, and it's not equitable.
I do have a follow-up comment to that. Would it be cheaper to build a new school than to repair Hall and Edison, or cheaper to build a new school and build than to repair each individual school?
Absolutely. One of the main reasons is because it'd be difficult for the state to fund any kind of renovation to these schools just because it doesn't really match the profile that they look for 21st century schools. So you don't have the acreage to really build the kind of school that you need to build on either one of those sites because they're very tight sites. And then you're funding that at 100% because the state wouldn't give you any reimbursables. You couldn't go through the DAS programs that are there for new school construction, renovation, and code update. So yes, building a new school will be cheaper because if you're, let's say it's $20 million you have to put into, and that's a conservative number, into Hall, you're funding that at 100%. If you build a 50 or $60 million facility, you're paying $12 million money because the state is going to provide the rest. And then the other piece to that is that, you know, you have all of the infrastructure that goes along with building a school through the state, right? Where you have your construction manager, you have all those checks and balances, you have the school building committee. You don't have that. You know, we're going to be taking that project on. We're going to use a consultant, but that's a very heavy lift for a small facilities department. And, you know, as a taxpayer, doesn't matter what city or town, you look at it and you say to yourself, is this the right investment? You know, and I get it. You know, I mean, people feel strongly about the schools, but once again, we need to have a vision for the district that really looks at these things. And if you look at the nation, everyone's decommissioning buildings at this point. It's just no one can sustain what we used to do. I mean, programs are different, libraries are different, education is different, the needs are different, but the building has remained the same since 1920.
I think
wait.
the parent, oh, I'm sorry.
I got another question. And so this is definitely before my time. I think even in Bridgeport, I lived here about 10 years. But what was done for the Black Rock School? Because it looked like it was the older facility with a new attachment to it.
Black Rock School had an addition put onto the site. The site is a bit bigger. It spans from one block to the next block. And they had an addition put on. But once again, that was another program that there wasn't enough money. And we did a substandard job of construction. And we're dealing with things now that we'll bring before the board at the next facilities committee meeting with the HVAC system there. You know, it's a VRF system. We would have put in that system if we had a choice. And it's failing. And, you know, there may be some litigation that we may have to engage in with what we're experiencing out there. But once again, old building, meshed with a new one, not a great idea. But there was more acreage on that site.
I figured ask for the public because that could be a potential comeback as well for the Black Rock neighborhood.
Yeah.
They got to keep their school with an attachment to it. So why in a different part of the city that may not be as affluent that the school has to close in its entirety? So I think clarifying and also explaining that there may be failures in that building, it may help the public at ease if this was a decision to go forward with the full board. Then my next question, then I'll open it back up to everybody, is just when were the last rounds, and this is vague with rounds, right? But repairs that were done to each of these buildings using ESSER funds?
They've been ongoing. New ESSER. Minimal at those buildings, actually. We used a lot of capital because we did have capital for pointing. We had capital for pointing at both buildings. But through ESSER, it's minimal because we focused in on major infrastructure. And the infrastructure that we're trying to sort of get our hands on is the infrastructure that is controlled through a system. And there's really nothing there. Really, in those buildings, I like old buildings to a certain extent because there's not much going on. You flick the boiler on and off to control it, as opposed to utilizing a computer and controls. And that's what we have in those buildings. There's really nothing. There's no AC. They're really rudimentary.
When were the boilers last replaced in those buildings? Since they're definitely over 100 years old.
I believe the boilers at Hall, there was a boiler done at Edison. There was a boiler done at Hall years ago through a repair and replacement program that the state had to put out probably 10, 15 years ago.
All right.
They're still in decent working order. Edison was done 4 or 5 years ago.
About 5.
I guess I'm asking for like a recycling purpose, is that if they're still at their useful life and if a decision for those facilities came to close, whether we would be able to reuse them.
Every building that we decommission, we go through with a fine tooth comb, and if there's any value, we take it.
I've seen that at the top. Okay, I'll open, I know Dr. Morgan had a comment, and then I'm still on my line of questioning, then I'll open it back up to the rest of the board members, since this is very engaging.
I just wanted to say, I think we need to look at it closely. Only because I think if parents were to go to other buildings where children go to school, they would see. You know how sometimes you take a game, you take some kids to a game in another town, and they look around and they see all of the equipment that the other town has, and then they realize, oh, we don't have that. Right now, those parents may not realize that there are places that are, you know, state of the art that kids are going to. We need to just think about equity. That's all I want to say.
Okay, Mr. Benahan, then Mr. Sokolovic.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One of the things is that I want to say is the handicap. All school you see, they don't have a handicap. The stairs, the same thing, and especially the special needs students, you know, it's terrible. It's terrible. As a person, I'm a handicapped person to take that stairs. You know, sometimes I have to be careful. Imagine a senior person or handicap. You know, it's bad. It's bad. That's one of the things. You know, like I said, people's looking for money, and we don't want to get sued. So much better to get updated to school, because, you know, it's very bad about the handicap situation. And I see the special needs student, how they, you know, they don't have that service, they don't have that space, they don't have what they deserve. You know, it's because it's not what they don't want to, it's the situation with the building. So it's very important that we had to see that, you know. Thank you. No more question, Madam Chair.
Mr. Sokolovic,
Yes.
microphone.
Maybe should do that after my name. Yes, thank you. What's the current capacity of both schools? I mean, the current enrollment versus capacities.
I'm not sure of the current enrollment.
Yeah, I got 2020's numbers. I think probably a little
It
lighter.
was on the last report. I don't mean to jump in, but it may be on our portal, because we did the capacity versus enrollment and the dates of the last renovations at the last facilities meeting. So I know we have that information, or we were provided with it.
Okay. Well, the last one I got available, I think is lower than this now, but for this example, just for expediency purposes, I'll use these. In 2020, the numbers were 46 and 49%. 189 students in Hall out of 385, and Edison 194 out of 415. So I was a little, okay, right, thank you. Yeah, so we're talking about 20 million for each school, spending $20 million.
Those are estimates?
Yeah. It's just all numbers are rough numbers.
Yes.
Estimates. 20 million per school for 184 students and 191 students. So that's $40 million. Now, if money was no object, well, let's pretend money is no object. Why can't we do the work without the money? I'm being facetious, but it's a real question, because people are going to come out and say, when it's too late, as they always do, because we cannot create money. We as a board cannot spend money we do not have. Let me repeat that for those listening online. We as a board cannot spend money we do not have. We need to, if people could come out and advocate for $40 million from the city to repair these 2 schools and to fix these 2 schools, we would likely be able to do it. That's $40 million above and beyond what we got today, because otherwise we'd have to take it from somewhere else in our district. So people need to realize, by the time you're sitting here telling us, please don't close our school, please don't close our school, it's way too late. It's way too late, because the money's not there. We cannot continue our services without paying for them. I mean, there's only 1, 2, 3 people, 4 people in this entire room who are not receiving pay. Will we all be here if we weren't receiving a salary, people gotta feed their families. They want to be paid for the work that they do. And it would be illegal for us to even to go into a deficit or debt to pay people if we don't have the money. So this is what we need to understand. Now, these facilities, just these two are focused on now, but after the master plan and this RFP is issued and people look at, we're going to look at all these other schools that are very cost inefficient to keep open with their small population sizes. And this is just a factor. It's not a factor of the facilities being run down. It's a factor of fiscal neglect that we cannot pay to keep these schools open, pay to keep up with this work. It's fiscal neglect on behalf of state, local, and federal. And they need to step up if they don't want to close their schools, because we talk about this budget is trying to build our tax base in the city of Bridgeport. But guess what? The biggest thing that'll drop the property values in the neighborhood is a school with plywood across its windows. We will be shrinking our tax base in the city of Bridgeport if we do not invest in education. Thank you.
Okay, I just want to comment as to the question you asked, because I was able to pull from the last facilities report. Thank you. I love reports. So Hall is at a 47% capacity with 184 students when it can hold up to 385. But given some of the comments, I'm kind of glad it's not at 385. And Edison is at 44%, so below capacity, 186 students when it can house 415. So I believe from my memory, we had about 14 buildings that were about under 50%. So and you know, there was definitely a thought process as to that. Are there any additional questions or comments? Feel free.
Thank you. So you mentioned a comment regarding AC not being available at Hall. How many times did we have to early dismissal for children in, say, 2022 in the summer, and any closing of schools?
I don't recall how many, but you know, many of the district schools don't have AC. You know, that's
About half.
yeah, right around half of our buildings have AC. That's another reason that we need to invigorate a school construction program again, because those investments are vital as things change, because they are changing. You know, we need to account for those things. To Selena's point, the environment, you know, within these buildings is a concern. And, you know, it's even tough to plug in fans in some instances because you're maxed out with power, you know, so it's difficult to provide any relief in some instances.
Are we looking at are we doing like daily temperature checks of the facility, or an average temperature?
Requested.
Thank you.
Okay. Seeing that there are no more questions and comments regarding this item. Actually, I do want to say one thing to the public. For all the families who have students that attend Hall and Edison School, you can feel free to contact us at the Board of Education with any questions or comments or any next items based off of the information that's been discussed here with that school and the conditions of the building. So don't say you weren't invited now in case a decision is made 2 years down the line. And so with that, we're going to move on to the next item in the agenda, which is discussion regarding a clear and consistent district-wide policy for facilities usage during all sporting events. So this came about, and I believe it was hit in diversity, equity, and inclusion. However, when we do have sporting events at our facilities and rules are being made, really who's making the rules for each usage as to which students can attend the event, who cannot attend the event. And from an equity perspective, is that happening at all the events, or is it just targeted at the basketball games and not the soccer or the football games? And so as far as to what are the safety concerns posed and what are the communication efforts, and based on the discussion here, what I would like to do is maybe have something proposed to governance, so we actually have a plan as to how our facilities are going to be used for student sport and events. I'm not sure who's the staff or of Captain Grech is here online as to who will discuss this particular agenda item. But this really does come into play with some of the decisions at our school games at Bassick, as well as, oh, I'm slipping the name. Nope, not, well, Hardin too, but also the middle school, no, not Clater, the middle school. But it's happened at a few of our high school and middle school sport basketball events. And so there we go, classical studies. I was thinking CMA and I was like, what does it stand for again? Okay, there we go. And so I'm not sure who is here to discuss this item, but it is necessary that we actually have a clear and consistent plan district-wide instead of students at one high school, they can invite their friends and go to a game, and then the rules different. I think from what we're hearing, we need to have a district-wide plan as to how we run our facilities, and that should also include our sporting events. Mr. Sokolovic?
Yeah, if I may.
Mr. Sokolovic, microphone.
I believe it's Barrett would be the best one to lead off on this because while the BPD may be involved in security, we drive the policy and as far as the Bridgeport Police Department interacting with our schools and securing our games and what have you. It should be a top-down approach with the superintendent. And there's discussions in the equity committee was focused around superintendent parents and those decisions made were basically most from her, with the exception of the beginning where one school refused to play with us because they didn't feel safe around our kids. But definitely I agree with the policy wise, and I think Ms. Parent, Superintendent Parents, the one to lead this. Did she leave? Or did she just, thank you.
And so the reason why I mentioned Captain Grech is from what I understand from various phone calls I received, it was a police decision, not a superintendent decision. It was then eventually backed up by the superintendent. And regardless of how it worked out, is that how we work all our sporting events at our facilities? Because that is the true equity concern.
Absolutely.
While we wait for Superintendent Perrin, I'm messing up everybody's name today, we can entertain a brief 5-minute recess, or we could just stay live. And so Mr. Benahan has moved for a brief 5-minute recess. Is there a second? It's been second. All in favor? Aye. We're going to move into a recess, but IT's not here to put us in recess, so it's still going to record. Okay, so we're going to break up into recess. All right, good evening. We're going to resume the Health, Safety, and Facilities Committee. The time now is 7:53. We had took a brief recess at agenda item number 5, which is discussion regarding a clear and consistent district-wide policy for the usage of facilities during all sporting events. So this is a bit backtracked. I'll just repeat what I had summarized earlier regarding some of the issues that had occurred at the basketball games with some of our high school and middle schools. And part I had explained the equity issue, whether the way it's going to be run at our facilities, will it be the same for all the buildings, as well as across different sporting events. So if we're going to limit students at our basketball games, will the same policy apply now for baseball and soccer events or soccer games as well as football games? And so the idea is to pass something on to governance where we'll actually have a policy and have something uniform district-wide. So then there's no, well, at Hardin, it's done this way, and at Bassick, it's done that way. That way, students as well as families know how Bridgeport School District functions when it comes to their sporting events.
So we definitely need to work on creating a policy in regards to equity about that. I think one of the issues was, I think I spoke about it previously, was that there was a divisiveness amongst what was being done on each of the building levels because there was various athletic directors that were providing, feedback as to what was happening. And there was all these different policies that were happening that were being enforced at the school level. However, there was not a uniform policy across the district. So moving into school year 23-24, there is going to be one athletic director that is going to be overseeing all high school athletics for next year. As far as middle school sports, we're still in contract with Caribe to do that, but there have already started conversations into what that's going to look like at those games across the board. Specifically at high school level, we have to become clear on what that looks like, and it really needs to be related to equity for students and looking at discipline. So if discipline is the major issue that was brought forward in regards to limiting who's allowed into games, the who, the where, and the why, in which will be spelled out in that policy, and it will be done in conjunction with the athletic director for next school year, as well as through the governance council, so that all voices can be heard. So that is something that we've already started talking about putting together and what that looks like for next year.
Okay, is there any questions or comments from the committee? Mr. Benahan?
It's not a question, but Ms. Perrin, if the students not behave the way it's supposed to be, and it's a policy and a protocol, then he needs to get consequence. Because really, if they we let it go and let it pass because they're students, because, they let them play, doesn't mean the other students will do the same thing. I know we want the students to have fun and, present the school, but if they don't follow the policy and protocol, sorry, there's a consequence. It's like if I have my child in my house, don't respect, they have a consequence. So I'm okay with whatever process has to be done.
Yeah, and in addition to the student athletes who are engaged, but also student spectators who are coming forward to watch the games. If they are not behaving appropriately in school, there has to be consequences for them as well. So it's a two-part.
Yeah, and yeah, I agree with you, especially parents and family members, whoever come to see, the family playing, they have to understand we got a protocol and a policy. If you don't follow that, you have to be out. If people, they don't see that. It's people that like to come with a big issue or a big drama and stuff like that, but we have rules. If you come rude, you respect that and everything's fine. I feel that everything is okay. But if you don't, you break that, so sorry, we want everybody to have fun. Absolutely. Everybody come enjoy, but let's have everything, professional and the way it's supposed to be. More comments, question.
Mr. Sokolovich?
Yes, just for sake of clarity, we still got some of the same misinformation floating around the community. Can you explain the events leading up to and decision-making process behind the cancellation of the Harding game and the classical studies games?
Sure. So the Harding game, that was as a result, there was an issue that took place in January 2023 when Harding played one of the New Haven high schools in New Haven at that time. There was a big.
Was it Bassick or Harding?
Oh, Bassick.
You said Harding.
Well, I
You
apologize.
were correct.
Bassick?
Thank you, Ms. Kennedy. Thank you.
Bassick, I apologize.
Thank
for
you. I apologize. That is correct. So it was Bassick was playing a game in New Haven where there was a huge altercation where students were involved and spectators as well as parents. So during that time, each of the schools went through a restorative circle to be able to talk about why this happened individually. And then we brought both of the schools together in hopes that if they did meet up in the state championships, that they would be at a point where they would be able to play constructively and according to the regulations. However, what was engaged in was a conversation that excluded district personnel from Bridgeport Public Schools. And that conversation was held with district personnel in New Haven who stated that at the time, if the schools did meet in that championship, it was going to be a closed game. This was never presented to our community in Bridgeport Public Schools. So when it was found out about this, one of the first things that I said was, well, we're not going to have a closed game. If anything, that we can increase security measures for our students. However, at that point, the New Haven district said, no, we don't want our children to play in that game. This is the agreement that we made, even though it was not done in conjunction with district personnel here in Bridgeport. So at that time, I made the decision that I was canceling the game because I was not going to exclude our parents or our community members for something where we had never weighed in and never shared the information. So that was that situation. And with the classical studies situation that happened, there was a game that was played. It was not a Bridgeport Public School sponsored event where classical studies as well as Curriell girls played during the holiday break in December. During that game, there was another altercation between two students, between each of the schools. Parents were involved, arrests were made at that game as well. Again, we follow a very similar process that we had with the Bassick and New Haven situation where there were restorative circles, where we brought the schools together, trying to create an environment so that way, if they met in the championship, that it would be, productive. We were going to be moving forward with that game. We had arranged for additional referees and so forth. But the problem came in when there was lots of information that came from parents about creating a very unsafe environment for the students who will be playing during those games. And it became very clear that if we allowed this to happen and there was any perception of some type of misdoing, it would become an extremely unsafe environment for the students and staff there. So I determined that I was canceling that game as well.
And a follow-up question. To your knowledge, has the police department ever restricted people from attending games on their own without direction from the district?
Not that I'm aware of.
Thank you.
Okay, I have a question because Harding High School did come up and it was a separate, I don't want to say incident, but I believe the event, I know Miss Brown attended, I don't want to say it was homecoming, but there was an event at Harding High School. Students, it was, I don't know, the senior event. I'm sorry, that may be a New York.
It was senior.
I was about to say there's a New York gap in knowledge because we didn't have sports team in my high school. So I'm like, it's something with the basketball players and their seniors. So it was their senior night. And from the allegations I've heard, and I'll phrase it allegations, is that students were turned away. And so we had students that may not have necessarily had family show up, but friends show up, and they were denied access to the building. And the actual procedure and notification that you couldn't go was never communicated until it was at the door. And again, this is just from my vague memory of what I was told occurred, it was one of those really cold nights. So we had students in the dark being turned away access from the building for an event, and whether the district had actually gave, or not this district, or even the building. So from Principal Brown, whether there's actual communications that you can't attend. And again, that's not necessarily a sporting event, but it is a facility event at a particular building. And again, if Bassick, all our high schools are going to have their senior night. So if it's done one way at Bassick and Central or BMA, and then Hardin wants to do their own thing, it's again another issue where there's a special event. No comment from the public. I'm talking. I have the floor. And so it's another situation where our students or their friends may be showing up to support each other, and very much in a community sense, and they're being denied access. And there's also just an outside safety concern, because to the extent that parents are like, oh, you're going to the high school for the senior event, great, and then they're being turned away in the middle of the night in the cold. Like, I mean, it's communications like that, even from the building level, for student safety, because to a certain extent, these facilities, these sporting events, these events and games are our students' safe place. It is probably one of the few places where they can go to a game, they're with their friends, and they're not out in the streets. And then the counter argument is that we're turning them away, so we're forcing, I mean, whether it's to that extreme, but we're forcing them away from their safe space. So I did want to bring up the Hardin senior night.
So, you know, that was shared with me, very similar to it was shared with you. What I am aware, those specific recommendations as far as students who were being turned away, that was not something that I was necessarily involved in. But I do hear you when you're speaking about it, because it does create a problem as far as equity amongst high schools and then notification to these students. So that is something that is going to be part of the policies that we're working on, because to me that all falls under the umbrella of sporting events, because the communication piece is very important. And if these students are eligible to go on because of whatever that took place, they need to be made aware of that ahead of time. So one of the things that I was thinking about as I was brainstorming earlier in the year when that came up was, you know, if there is a list of infractions that took place during the day that causes a safety hazard, because to me, that would be the biggest thing, a safety hazard, not if you're skipping class, though you shouldn't be doing it, not something like that, but something that would really cause a safety hazard that, you know, you might have access to some individuals that you had physical interactions with during the day. Then there would be like a list that would be generated, that would be presented. Those students would be, you know, notified as well as their parents. And then there will be a list that will be available at, you know, the entrances so that people will be aware. And it would be a cutoff date. So it couldn't happen like the same day unless it was a true emergency. It would have to be a cutoff date beforehand, so there would be enough time to be able to communicate that, because that's an issue as well.
Thank you for clarifying that. So I get the point with the cutoff date. I think that's a really good idea. And then we would just verify it with like the student IDs. That's okay from each school.
And hopefully they will have them by then, because most of them have them. That was an issue this year too, that everybody didn't have student IDs, which became an issue.
Is that building-wide, district-wide, students losing them? And this is a gap in my knowledge, and I don't mind admitting it to the public, but and I can only compare it to my high school experience, which probably wasn't that great, but walking into the building, show your ID, go through the metal detector, go to class. Is there a similar process where it's show your ID, and if you don't have your student ID, then what?
No, because usually most students, unless they're returning, they don't necessarily have an ID for that school. So IDs are issued once students engage in the photography day. So that usually happens in October, November-ish. Once everybody gets photographed for that, then the IDs are printed. So if they were a student who was previously there, they should have their ID. But if they don't, then they would not have access to that. So thinking about the equity piece there too, it would have to be, you know, they give a name. Hopefully we have a name for them, and it would be a list for that. You know, once the IDs are issued, we can make sure of that. But again, our population is so transient. So if you go from Bassick to Harding and you now become that student, more than likely, and if that's after that picture day, you probably are not going to have the ID that says you're a Harding student. It may say you're a Bassick student. So there has to be some clarity around carrying that as well, because most of the times when I walk the high schools, I don't see children with them. Children in elementary school have them as well. Usually they don't carry them either. The only mandate really is for staff at this time.
Wait, but so if, let's hypothetically, I'm a student at Hardin. I've graduated, but security remembers me. It's the first year, the class year, and oh, they recognize my face. I could just kind of walk in.
It depends on if it's open to just students. So if you're a guest, they don't necessarily say, well, who are you here to see? Or, are you a student at the school? If a guest just shows up at a game, they're a guest and they show up at a game. But if there's a list of specific students, you're going to need some type of identification to be able to say, okay, in cross-reference, this student committed this infraction, they're not there. But right now, we don't have any existing policy around showing an ID as you enter a game, whether that be for a student or anyone else.
That's interesting. I guess in my head, I'm like trying to paint a bunch of loopholes all around it, but I'll open up the floor to the other board members for their comments or questions. Mr. Benahan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Perry, I got a few questions. Now, do you say a lot of things? I just brought it. When a police officer is in the game, why, as I know Ms. Joe Sutcliffe say something, why sometimes they push parents away? Why they think that they control the game, they control the school, and they control everything? We have the experience, we have the parents call us, and they call us right away. And I say, I know the police officer is there, and about the safety situation, but why sometimes they push parents away and say, no, you cannot come in. I'm the one decide. I'm the law, because I know they happen. They recorded, say I don't care. I'm the law. This is my way. And I'm like, why? Why they acting like that? When in good communication, respect, maybe they understand. But if they come like because of the law, they think they can control the whole thing, the whole game. They control everyone.
So what I will say to that is, because I can't speak for the police in that
No,
regard.
I understand.
But what I can say is they are there to make sure that it's a safe environment. So I can make assumptions, which I don't necessarily want to do. But if you're engaging in a way that maybe cause a safety risk, that is their responsibility to address those things to make sure there's a safe environment. But I'm not going to say that, they're in charge of it, because they're not in charge of the game. They're in charge to make sure that everybody is safe. And as long as everyone is safe, then they're just there as spectators like everybody else.
But they cannot, not only parents, they cannot push away the students.
They can't just send a child away. So say, for instance, you're a student at Harding High School and you show up for a game and there is not a reason, a safety concern, there is no reason for you to be turned away.
Okay. And when the security and the police officer is in the building, the board education pay them or the city?
So there are, for SROs specifically, SROs are assigned to these schools. So there's a total of 4 for the entire district that are assigned. And there is a budget that comes from part of our operating budget that helps support that as well. But some of that is grant funded, some of that is city funded, but there are 4.
Just give us, let's see what happened in Bassett High School, Caribe. They pay them the police SRO or the board education.
So for Caribe, specifically what part of Caribe?
When they have whatever they have the game, let's see, basketball and basketball, something like that.
So though that comes out of our budget for all of sports, because there's always a SRO who is there at sporting events. So that comes from that. What we do when it comes down to assigning them, we work in collaboration with Caribe to determine whether there's going to be an officer there all day, part of the day. If there's been an incident previously, we will make a determination of how often they're going to be there, because it's not one that's necessarily assigned for each and every game at each and every site because of the costs.
Okay, and the other question, when you got police officers and you got security, why the reason you got both other security or you need extra? So my question is, you have a security, I know they're trying to be sure that everybody's safety. Why we have a police officer when it's a game?
So it depends on what the level of safety. At high schools, we usually engage in having some SRO presence there just due to the age of the students and some safety concerns around that piece. Now, at the elementary games, usually I see somebody will come in, but they're usually not there unless there's been an issue. So for instance, this year with Caribe, during the first weeks of the game, there was an SRO that was going to each and every site. Then we started pulling back on that. Caribe did want them to be there more than not there. So what we did was we had one police officer who was there and going to each and every site to check in to see if there were any concerns. This sporting season was definitely more active in the city of Bridgeport and as well as across the state as far as different physical altercations and stuff. So the presence was there.
Yeah, thank you. And the other thing that we're talking about the ID. Like Ms. Baptiste said, we recurring, strain that an ID. If you don't have ID, you cannot get in. Let's say another student. Let's say my son graduated from Bassett High School 3 or 4 years back. He want to see the game, and he don't have an ID from the school, so he cannot come in.
We don't have a policy, like I said, about IDs as of yet. We don't have anything that says right now, if you're going to come in, you got to show an ID. Okay. We don't have that.
But they cannot start to go see the game.
They cannot stop them to go to see no, there's nothing that's going to stop them right now. We don't have an existing policy that says that if you don't have an ID, you cannot enter the game. This is something that high school principals, have been asking about. But again, one of the issues that came up was when we issue IDs. So we can't just say that we're going to stop people from entering games because they don't have that type of identification. Those are conversations that we are engaged in. But if everybody else can come in from the community and they don't have to show their ID, why do students? Because the community members do not show their ID. Staff members have shown their ID. A lot of times they have them on when they come in, so that a lot of times they avoid the paying and the fee of that nature, but it's not mandated to do that.
Because sometimes, because the last time they have one of the students performed something in Bassett High School. It was like 10 students that they want to come to see the game. And the police officer did not let him come in. And I was there and I said, oh, not come in. I said, no, they have to go. I said, they're going to pay. No, they're not going to pay. They cannot come. They're not come in. I had to get in. I said, I will pay them. I will be responsible for them. They will perform something in Bassett High School while they cannot come to see the game. And I stayed with them. So they pushed almost the 10 kids from Bassett away. And I said, why they have to be acting like that? And then the reason that's why sometimes students acting with attitude. Because not because they have that police officer security, you have to respect them. I always say, if you want to receive respect, you have to earn the respect. Doesn't matter who you are, what kind of title, what position, where you come from. You want respect. I cover that for the students. Thank to the coach, Patrick, he helped me. He said, don't worry about it. And I will stay there until they leave. So they cannot be responsible for the kids. And the kids were acting good. But that situation, that ID and everything, I hope we can do something and work because, if I have family or friends, they want to see the game. Let's see my kids will graduate from Bassett High School, they want to see it, they cannot because the ID. So I'm worried. I'm just concerned about that.
Yeah, that IDs. I know one thing that they were asking for is to have an adult to be present with the student. I do know that, but I don't know anything about you utilizing of an ID to say you're a Bassett student. You can come into a Bassett game.
Yeah, but that's another thing that you say adults. Sometimes parents that are working. And they see, I want to see my friend working, playing the game, or my cousin, or my brother, my sister, whatever. I cannot come in because I don't come with adult. So, we had to work, find out how to work much better, and how to work with the security in the school to deal. No more question, no more comment, Madam Chair. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Parent.
Yes. Go ahead.
Thank you. And thank you again for, ad hoc jumping in, answering questions. I really do appreciate that. I just wanted to take a deeper dive into the ID. I fully understand the relation between the ID and the sporting events or why it was brought up. What's the practical use of the ID if it's not done at enrollment or if a student changes schools?
So really what the idea, and this started many years ago, was the photographing of students took place because they wanted to make sure that there was a recent photo of a student if there was a case of an emergency. So that's where that came about. So there was the printing of the little photographs that go on the CUME cards, which are still paper here in the city of Bridgeport. And then they use those to create IDs so students will have it. It's a way of sense of identity, truly, for each and every student to have one. But there has been no policy around how those really can be utilized at the elementary or high school levels.
Okay, that's something that we will look into in the near future to optimize the use of the IDs, or.
So we have
you know,
to talk about what that's going to look like, because again, each and every school chooses when they engage in the photographing process. So you talked about at enrollment. So for an 8th grade student who's going to a high school, that will look different for a student who's already coming in later. And because it's so transient, we have to talk about what really would be the most beneficial use of those IDs, aside from having something in the case of an emergency. We do have to talk about that as far as what that looks like across the district, because it is variance.
Thank you. And I'm very happy to hear we'll have a athletic director that sees the entire district. I think, centralizing that approach would, be benefits for the entire district. So thank you.
Right. Because I since I've been here, there's definitely been shifts and changes. There used to be a athletic director, and then it changed, and there was no longer an athletic director, and then there were directors at each individual site. And it's just everybody kind of wants to do their own thing, and there's no continuity, which is problematic. So that's one of the ideas behind centralizing and creating systematic approaches.
Go ahead, Mr. Skolvik.
Yes, okay. By the start, all roads again are going to lead to money, as usual, and things come out of my mouth. Well, we did have an athletic director, 2018, that athletic director was cut. I may have the wrong year.
16, 17, I think.
16, 17. That's one of the first cuts. One of the first directors to go was the athletic director. We may find a few dollars right now to have that athletic director, but facing the fiscal cliff and the budget cuts coming, that job may be on the chopping block again.
Not the way I have it set up. Not the way I have it set up. I'm telling you that.
Yeah, well, yeah, but that's the thing. After athletic director at 130,000 or whatever the salary may be, when it comes down time to make $16 million in cuts, and an athletic director is balanced against maybe a director of student services. I'll just make one up. I know which one was in jeopardy before in the last lines that I had to actually advocate for it to stay. So if it's coming down to an athletic director versus an academic director, if the board would settle on keeping the athletic director over the academic director, I'd be very surprised and very disappointed. I mean, athletics does have its place, but we got to take care of the academics first and foremost as a district. So there's they say the best laid plans. I mean, it's no disrespect to that, but in reality, this whole encompasses anything. I mean, I'm not objecting to having it right now, but.
Well, I just want to bring some clarity to that. I understand exactly where you're coming from when you talk about academics versus athletics, specifically because, when we think about, our mission and our goal is to provide, an academic environment for our scholars, and athletics is part of that.
Absolutely.
But when it comes down to the level of importance, when it comes down to decisions we have to make, when it comes down to fiscal responsibilities, we do have to do that. But the way that we're looking at the use of athletic director now, it is not just the only umbrella in which this person will be serving. So there is an academic umbrella as well. So it is a shared role. So that's what I want you to understand. So it wouldn't be somebody who would necessarily be cut because of the dual role that they're playing.
Yeah, you would think the same thing of kindergarten paraprofessionals, but they were gone in a minute. Yeah, but okay, I'll get back to this.
I do want to just make a quick comment on that it is the holistic experience of our students that motivates them to come to school. I remember touching on this in teaching and learning, although I don't personally agree with it, but I understand that it is real, that sometimes it is the athletics alone that keep some of our children pushing into the school. And so something consistent that's going we can have the hypothetical role you made up, but if we don't have a solid sports program, some students will not attend. And so it is catering to the whole student academic environment. You know, it will help keep some students in school. It will help keep some students from getting into trouble. It will help build some students discipline that they may not have at home. So I don't want to have that conversation now of if we had to cut a Macintosh apple versus a Fiji apple at this time, because at the end of the day, it's still it's an apple and it's part of the experience of the education environment.
Absolutely.
And I just want to pivot back to just something really quick that was a student.
I had other questions I was going to get back to.
Let me just finish my thought process. Jesus, yeah, you kind of cut me off on that, but you can go ahead and finish your comment.
Okay. All right, now as far as the SROs and the funding, when did we start picking up that tab again for some of it?
I can't answer all that. Remember, this was something I was not prepared to speak on, so I cannot answer that question for you now.
And when Caribe holds a game, are they not paying their portion of the facility use fee?
So Caribe's agreement that was signed under previous administration talks about unlimited use of facilities.
Free of charge?
So whatever the agreement made previously, they're supposed to be encumbered under that. So it is not something where they will be paying a facility fee for each and every use of the building. And that is part of their LOA that was signed previously.
Do we know when that expires?
It expires at the end of next school year, so June 2024.
Okay, and based on back house, police security. I believe that's all. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. Let's see. So, I think this is just thank you, Interim Superintendent Perrin, for on the fly jumping in and clarifying that point. I do think it's going to be a round of discussions. Oh, now I remember, but this wasn't what I was going to say. Mr. Benin, the hypothetical with the ID, like maybe it's for community members too, because if we have grown adults fighting and Mr. Smith was the one that was in the altercation and got arrested at the high school game, Mr. Smith shouldn't be coming into the building. And if Mr. Smith's an adult driving, he should have his driver's license on him at all times. Oh, wait, there's actually another level to it. There's multiple levels to it, actually, why some people may not have ID that I just thought of. So we're not going to go down that rabbit hole right now. But I do want to thank you for coming in. This will take further discussion, and I hope that we can develop a plan that can be implemented so we have something clear and consistent for our students. We're now going to move on to item number 6, which is presentation of health-related grants the district is applying for that can be used for students' physical and mental health, including the SAMHSA grants. So this item came up from a regular board meeting from a parent and the public, asking what outside of our ESSER funds, outside grants that we're going to use so we can continue to support students with their social emotional needs in the district. And so present, hey, Nadira.
Hello, good evening, everyone. So this was a wide-ranging request when I saw it. I certainly did not attend that prior board meeting, so I didn't have the context. So I actually have a lot of information in terms of our current grants. I can start with just giving some information on the things that we do have pending. We do have coming up to the state, the primary mental health grant program. That's for maximum $20,000, which is to focus on the implementation of general education, school-based early detention and intervention programs. This is for kindergarten and through grades 3. That's going to be due at the end of June. We do have, and maybe this was the one that was mentioned during the board meeting. This is True SAMHSA. It's the Project Aware program. Ms. Batiste Perez, do you recall if that was the name of it?
I know it was SAMHSA, so if that sounds, and I've been destroying names all tonight, so that sounds about right.
Okay, so Project Aware, and Aware is in caps. That is for advancing wellness and resiliency in education program. That's up to 1.8 per year for 4 years. That last cycle closed recently. It is on our radar for the next cycle, which is in 2024. I have to mention that we have applied several times for Project Aware, and this is going to sound a little broken record-ish. We did not get the funding, even though we had really competitive programs and we were putting forth really, strong applications. When we looked at the traditional funding streams of that particular program, they seem to be giving mainly to state boards of education for them to either, dwindle down to maybe districts if they needed to. I have seen some districts receive awards. They were going with really heavily, combined programs with community-based or even reaching out at the state level. That was not what was in our prior applications. We certainly, again, do have it on the radar and, we'll work to, partner if it does take having, a larger stake at the state site to get this money into us, but it's not something that was previously funded. There's also another SAMHSA item that's on our radar, which is grants for expansion and sustainability of the comprehensive community health services for children with serious emotional disturbance. That's actually at the same level. It's for 1.8 per year for up to 5 years. That cycle is coming up again in 2024. These things, they really need to be done thoughtfully. It's very easy to assume that just put in an application and we'll receive it. But when we look at where their funding streams have been, they have focused on mainly community health centers, also at the state level, creating really big programs. We would have to be working really hard, making sure we're partnering with the right organizations, taking time to, have those really meaningful and intentional conversations about what we're looking forward to doing in the district and getting these programs in. Something that we recently did provide a letter of support, and that's what I thought was the question about when I originally received this. It's actually through HRSA, which is another, health-related federal program. HRSA stands for Health Resources and Services Administration, and that program was called the Health Center Program for School-Based Service Expansion. We provided a letter of support for Southwest. Their application went towards the end of April, so we're waiting to hear back what that partnership could look like. They were focusing on providing expanded support at the school-based health centers for Blackham, Caesar Battaglia, Reed, and Roosevelt. So we did partner with them last cycle as well. They were not successful, so we're hoping, fingers crossed, that that can turn into something as we move ahead. Other than that, we do have, all of the other various ESSER grants. We have homeless grants. I guess it just depends on the question is when you're asking about health related. If you're looking for just all our SEL related items, that certainly still includes some of those items, particularly under ARP ESSER. We have the Student Success Program. We have the social workers that are being funded. Of course, we're getting additional grants. Something that just came up is that primary health that actually came out yesterday from the state. So there's always something coming up, but we are looking at both the federal and the state level, and even for private funding, which is something we have for our SEL initiative, to just, continue to provide those services to the students.
Thank you, Ms. Clark. I think this is twofold from the request from the regular board meeting, but also just to let the public and the community know that our grants department is working. I know we're lean and mean.
Yes.
but also that there are certain grants that we're looking towards. We're trying to stay up. And I guess the best way to phrase is be reflective in case we don't receive a particular grant, what we can do instead of just repeating I mentioned with Mr. Garcia earlier, it's like once you figure out how to get the grant or write it in a particular way, you kind of know the magic to it. And so it like you mentioned, it's not just like you apply and you get it, but what we need to do to actually put in the requirements to be competitive and receive it. In terms of the SAMHSA grants, are there, because you said 2024, the application the next time it'll be available, are there any thoughts and process now with reaching out to the State Board of Education?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you can go ahead.
Oh. Yes, no, certainly. Like I said, it's really making sure, as I was mentioning at the beginning of the meeting when I was jumping in, not asked, I apologize for that, but really finding, the subject matter expertise. Of course, our nursing department, we have our school guidance counselors. So we have to find our right taught partners to have these discussions about what the potential grants are, and then figuring out who in the community are community-based organizations, and then at the state level. More than a couple of years ago, we had a federal state tie-in SAMHSA grant that was the Safe Schools, Healthy Students grant that, really spun out really great relationships at the state level and, throughout the district, working with a lot of other thought partners around the state. So we do have those type of connections, but it's really finding a great program, getting those subject matter experts to give us the information so we could put together those applications and being thoughtful. A lot of these grants will tell you can't supplant. So you have social workers that are being paid in one grant. And if you get both of them at the same time, you end up with a really big issue because you only have so many resources. So we can't, run a grant concurrently and expect that we'd be able to implement it as successfully as anybody would be thinking, which is why we didn't push so hard with trying to, pursue a SAMHSA grant right now. A lot of the social workers, our student success group, they're in our ESSA grants, which aren't, tying off till next year. So it's being strategic and paying attention to all of the things, all the pokers that we have in the fire to make sure that we're going to be able to successfully, implement our programs and spend down the money once we get it in an effective way. Because reporting is 100% guaranteed with every grant that we get, especially if it's at the federal level, the state level. We have to be able to effectively show that we're spending the money in the timeline that we have agreed to.
Thank you. I'll open the floor up to committee members.
Thank you. So question, I know you stated that for Project Aware, you were denied. Do you get maybe feedback from the grants, things that you were missing? And can you share some of the things that were required to maybe get you the approval?
So yes, so we applied for Project Aware in 2014. We took the notes that were provided, turned that around. I felt that we provided a stronger application in 2015, and we were denied again. And so at that point, you start to think, okay, so we made all the changes they suggested. We went in with, what we felt were updates, and then we were still denied. And then again, as we're looking at the trend where they're focusing more at state boards, you start to feel, okay, maybe that was their focus in this particular space. Do we give them a rest and we come back after a certain point in time? So at the federal level, yes, you certainly get, review notes and you can make your efforts and change. But again, it's up to that person or that team doing that review to give us even more notes or actually to send us to the goalpost, which, sometimes happens and sometimes does not.
Okay, thank you. Do you know if Connecticut State Board of Connecticut applied for this particular grant?
For Project Aware, when I was looking at the list over the last 2 or 3 cycles, I didn't notice their name, but I would have to reach out to one of my contacts just to see if it's something they just decided to pass on. Again, I don't have any knowledge right this moment.
Thank you. Also, I know you also mentioned creating strong partnerships with organizations. What are some type of organization you're looking to create partnership with if it's not already solidified, and how are you looking, what are some strategies you have to, grow the partnership?
So under the health banner you're referring to, or just in general for the district?
In general for the district.
So, I mean, it's very wide. We're really, for me, I say we're one of the biggest organizations that have so many different things going on. There could be a strand one day for SEL. There could be a strand for buying the curtains behind you. There's always something going on. So there are people in the community, there are, private donors, there's things at the federal level, there's, private grants. It just depends. So it's, if we find that there is an organization that, provides a particular service or is willing to donate, then it's, sort of cultivating that relationship. It just depends on what's on the list, which is always everything's on the list. We can't do everything. We really are a very lean, small team, but we do try our hardest once we get leads or we're figured out there is a connection between something, reaching out and doing all that we can.
Thank you. And last question. What does the trend look like with the grant approval? Say like dating back 5 years. For the past 5 years, are you seeing more grant approvals in this district or less? And where do you see maybe the opportunities are?
So that's an interesting question because a lot of funding we have received in the extreme millions of dollars have been due to COVID. So, from 2020 on, we would have seen a huge explosion. So to try to use that as a trend is really difficult because I'd be giving you really, explosive information that wouldn't last to, 5 years from now.
Gotcha.
So
inflated numbers.
Yes, extremely inflated numbers. Just our ARP ESSER was 100 million. We got the largest award from, everybody in Connecticut as a school district. So, and every day, I'm not even, being facetious, there is a new grant popping up in the state EGMS system, and almost all of them are tagged ARP ESSER. So my inference is that there is a lot of money that hasn't been distributed, that the state's still making, additional, decisions on the background. And as they make those final decisions, they're releasing those grants. And then they're telling you, okay, by the way, this has ARP ESSER money. So this is now the new deadline. This is a program, I know we're in a different committee, but I would have mentioned, the SPPT program. That's something we were getting for several years. That's the support for pregnant and parenting teens program. That was sort of off the radar, off the federal radar, because that's federal money. The state applied for it and it came to us with ARP ESSER money. And so now here's a new cycle. So it just really is kind of ongoing with new things or bringing back old things that there wasn't funding that just dried up and now it's available again. So we're really in a great, what I like to call the boom season, because we're really able to help, fund and create different programmings that we weren't, able to continue over the last couple of years. But that's going to start transitioning off at what is now listed as the end of ESSER, which is at the end of 2024. But there are lots of things happening as we're going along, so we just have to see if there's other things coming up.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yes, Mrs. Kolovic, microphone.
Question. Are we applying for every single grant possible that we can receive?
I would like to tell you, yes, that is humanly possible with the hours that my staff and I work. Are we leaving things on the table? I would be lying if I said no. I mean, there's only so much that we could do. If we don't decide to pursue something, it's because we're working on a major grant that is requiring all the efforts. Or we're looking at a different way to do something. Mr. Garcia mentioned to you about that EPA grant. We actually had that on our radar and started working on it as a district submission. We figured out it was better as a collaborative with UConn with their name on it, maybe a stronger potential that they would get it as a higher education entity, which is also something that works against us sometimes, a community-based organization. Sometimes they could be better qualified in the federal or state or private entity eyes to fund a particular item, and us getting in on a tag is better, and we can get, a subcontract to, implement services on our end. We are trying. There's a lot going on. But, could we do more with more staff and more time? 100%.
Absolutely. I reiterate, when I ask these kinds of questions, there's no knock on the staff. I know you're working 100%, 200% above capacity, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And these questions are to draw out the fact that we are indeed underfunded. And we as a board, we know this, but the community out there does not know this. So just to reiterate, our lack of funding is preventing us from chasing additional funding, and we're kind of stuck in a vicious cycle.
I'd say so.
Mr. Benahan, do you have any questions or comments?
No question. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Clark. I did leave it open-ended. Again, it was just kind of a community overview. And we appreciate all the work that you and the staff do to try and get us as much money as possible when everyone else is kind of turning their backs on us. So with that said, thank you.
Thank you.
I don't think I need you for the next item regarding the school resource officers.
I hope not, so I'm going to sign off. Good night, everyone. Thank you so very much.
Have a good evening.
You too.
Now we're going to move over to the 7th item on the agenda. 1 second. No, I ain't see. Okay, we're going to move on to the 7th item on the agenda, which is presentation on the school resource officer's scope of work. This item was suggested to me from committee member Albert Benahan. So if you want to give context, you can feel free to do so, Mr. Benahan. But if not, then we'll let Captain Greg go forward.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, Captain Greg, Lieutenant Park. Congratulations both of you, to be a captain lieutenant, for the city. Appreciate that. As Madam Chair said, I got some concern about security. I believe you received what I want to hear. I have some questions, but I will give you the floor. You can start.
What would you like me to?
Well, first of all, I'd like to, of course, I can answer. Of course, that's no problem. First of all, the training of your security guards. How far is this, how many times the security guard got trainings? And how long are they taking the whole year, or only the 10 months when the school is open?
So, I don't want to steal.
Captain and Lieutenant, can you just make sure you turn the mic in front of you on screen? You can put it right in the center.
In the middle.
There you go.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So what we try and do is when there's schools not in session, we try and get them training. We just did a training session. You want to explain the training session, Chris, we just did?
Yes, we did. So during the April school break, we set up a few different things. We had classes that was anywhere from de-escalation, crime prevention, I want to say suicide prevention. We talked about human trafficking. Try to go off the top of my head here. That's one thing I don't have listed today.
Mental well-being.
Mental health and well-being. JRB came in. We did emergency procedures with Tehran from EOC. Esperanza didn't make it.
So pretty much
our days were basically full.
So whenever there's no school, we try and do training. They get CPI certified. They have, it's every 3 years, but we try to do it every year. So this way they're proficient in it. So if there's a lawsuit or when we go and defend it, we can say, hey, the course is certifications every 36 months. We do it every 12 months. So we have a proficiency in it. They have a guard card, which all the guards have to get it themselves.
I believe every 3 or 5 years, they have to get recertified. Doing it, we try and do a lot of report writing, because what we've known or what we found out over the years is every time we get sued as a district, the first thing they want is a report. So we want to make sure they're proficient in report writing. And then, you know, part of our SOP, any guard, security officer that goes hands-on with anybody, they have to write a report. We have to review the report. We have to make sure everything is above board and it's done correctly. We do a lot of de-escalation because, you know, we want to de-escalate situations before they rise, and red flags. So if something's going on in the school, so the guards done a beautiful job 2 weeks ago. A young lady left Central. She walked in the back. They thought it was a little suspicious. Long story short, the car was following her. The guy gets out the car, tries to pull her into the car. She's on the phone. She calls 911. We end up finding the car. We arrest the guy. And it wasn't the first time he tried to do this. So we try and encompass all that training, because at the end of the day, I've always said it's about the children. It's about the kids. It's about safety. You know, we've had school shootings. There's 180 school shootings in the last 10 years. 180. It's high. We had Sandy Hook not far from us. You know, unfortunately, you know, the inner city of Bridgeport is a great city, but we do have violence. We have a lot of shootings. So we want to prevent that, and knock on wood, we've done a really good job over the past 10 years, you know, that we keep everyone safe. So that's our primary responsibility. All the high schools, security officers do a phenomenal job, you know, doing their due diligence in the morning. And again, you know, we do different approaches. Can't explain everything on public session, but we've got layers of approaches that we could take.
This is open to committee and board members. I had allowed Mr. Benahan to start first because he had referred this to committee. But anyone with questions, you can feel free to raise your hand.
I have more questions, but I just want to know my.
He has a lot of questions, so this may be your opportunity. Okay, seeing none.
I was trying to defer to Mr. Gillen if he had any first. All right, I got a couple of questions. Well, first a comment. Every time I hear a police department or a police officer mention Sandy Hook in the city of Bridgeport, we don't fit that demographic. Those type of things don't really happen in inner cities. They're mostly in the suburbs. And I always like to emphasize that, because any changes made to security in a city where that demographic doesn't really fit, it's not going to work. We need to concentrate on our demographic and our issues, which mass shootings are one of them. Okay, that's the first. That's just a comment. And second, when was the last time we had a memorandum of agreement between Bridgeport Public Schools and police department?
I don't know. You'd have to
Captain, sorry. Yep.
I'm not sure. You'd have to check with.
Yeah, because I don't remember ever doing one. I know there's one in place, so it's got to be at least 8 or 9 years. And I would like,
10 years.
Yeah, and I like to say, how do you guys decide? You guys don't just walk into a school and start patrolling the hallway, correct?
No.
You've got to be invited in for the most part.
Well, no. So when we first took over the schools, we had over 400 arrests. Now we're down to, I don't know, so far this year, how many do we have?
12.
12. So we're about not arresting kids. We're about keeping kids in school. It's about having a safe zone. That's what we do. Okay. So our relationship with the Board of Education has been phenomenal, because we're all on the same page. It's about keeping the kids safe, keeping them strong. So unlike a lot of other districts, our philosophies are different. We do a lot of referrals out. You know, we make sure the kids are safe. And it is a city, and we do have gang or group issues within here. We've had some arrests that, you know, and I can't get into specifics, but they were very, very serious arrests from some of our students. Very serious arrests. But, you know, what we do is, you know, and it's pretty sad because we built a great program. When we first started, we had 14 SROs and school police combined. We're down to 3. So we have 3 SROs for the whole district. That's what we have. So they do a really good job of when the call for services, when a principal calls or the teacher calls, we try and get those 3 officers to respond or the sergeant responds. So this way, because we know the protocols. You know, we've changed our policies in the police department where you're not just making an arrest on a child. There's a protocol in place where you have to do the mediations, you have to do the referrals, you got to do everything. And that's our last resort. And that's why we've been very effective in what we do.
Yeah, and that's why I'm touching upon the memorandum of agreement, because I believe a lot of, I've heard very good things about yourself. And as far as going around using arrest as a last resort, I want to know, I'm trying to figure out how much of that is codified, because there's not always going to be a Captain Greg, there's not always going to be a Lieutenant Parks, and it's not always going to be a police chief that keeps the same philosophies. I mean, we've got certain police chiefs in certain cities that may default to arrest first, and that's something we need to, I think, needs to be codified in the memorandum of agreement, like when, just to be sure that there's an understanding that things continue the way you've been doing them to make sure arrests are minimized.
Right, and you know, we were invited to Washington, D.C. many years ago to discuss how we deferred the arrest, that we didn't make the arrest. And what I can tell you with Chief Porter, and he's got a 5-year contract, he is 100% with the program that we don't make arrests. That's a last resort, you know. Tricia, obviously I got promoted. Tricia came in, she was an SRO, you know, she is a sergeant, and I'm helping her out to oversee her. So we have a transition of knowledge and programs. You know, we're not going to leave it where someone leaves and no one's trained up. Tricia has 5 years left. I only have 2. So, you know, I'm there obviously as a blanket, you know, and you know what? I think the reason it works is we care, right? And we've shown that we care. And the stuff that we do is for the kids, and we stay out of the politics of it. And, you know, at the end of the day, it's all about the children. It's about what's best for the children.
And now you say you're down to how many? Three now? Now, obviously you can't respond to every incident with an SRO. How does the
city
standard police officer respond?
So the city cops respond. So when a principal calls and there's no SROs available, then Sergeant Parks will respond and make sure it's handled properly. And if that means we have to intervene, we intervene. The good thing is also I oversee day shift patrol. So all the officers on day shift patrol, I'm in charge of. So they know my philosophy is on children. You know, we're not putting them into the system. It does no good, right? So it's about helping and finding out how we can resolve this. So we've done a good job so far, and I'm hoping, and I know this, I can speak for the chief, when we get more manpower, then obviously we're going to start adding more SROs, because that's our most vulnerable thing is the students, the children.
And what's the difference in the training between a standard police officer and SRO? Is that something you could go into in public?
It's a philosophies. It's the interactions with the DCF workers, the mental health crisis workers, and it's the relationships they build, right? So the building the relationships with the principals, the vice principals, the social workers, and the students. So, you know, we try to make that interaction very friendly. We try to, you know, we've had great successes where students have come forward and spoke. You know, unfortunately, there is a lot of stuff that goes on, right? A lot of bad stuff that goes on. And I think the relationship has been really, really founded. And listen, we're not perfect. I tell you right now, we're not perfect. But, you know, I think within the right frame, the program works. And we've shown that with the figures and our results.
Thank you.
Any, go.
Good evening. I'm not sure if you're able to go into this detail, but you say it was 12 arrests over this year so far. Any common trends of these arrests?
Say assaults,
All were assaults?
serious assaults, and that's why there was an arrest in the end.
Okay.
So if it's two students getting into a fight, well, we don't advertise this, but we're not gonna make an arrest. Kids fight. I mean, I had plenty of fights as a kid, right? So I get it, I understand it. That's not a place where the police need to be involved. That's a place where the council comes in. That's where you pull the kids in, you let them talk, you mediate it, you get it going. It's when it raises to the level of injuries, it's not good. Serious, serious stuff.
And you spoke a bit about relationships with the really interdisciplinary team, which I like that approach. Can you talk about how you go about building a relationship with the students a bit more?
So what we try and do, what we've done over the last 10, 11 years is we try to hold summer camps, because the students have a really big engagement with sports. That's just the way it is. We send the officers in the schools where they talk to the students, but they're not doing it in a negative way. They're doing it in a positive way, because unfortunately, a lot of students, the first interaction with police officers is usually negative when they respond to the home or they respond to a neighborhood. So we're trying to change that mindset where they feel comfortable speaking with a cop, and it takes years. I mean, it's not something that you can do it overnight. And with the SROs, it's that mindset, right? It's like, look, we have to help. How do we help? We have to outsource it, resource it. JRB has been phenomenal where they come in and they give them the right help they need. And some of it's counseling, some of it's just parent involvement, getting the parents involved. But the SROs go that next step, where they'll follow up, they'll make sure things are right.
Thank you. One last question. Any efforts to recruitment strategies from the department?
Well, unfortunately, it's all over the country right now. No one wants to be police, right? It's not a good time in the country to be a police officer. I have to say, I think in Bridgeport, we have a very good community relationship. Problem is when one of the lowest paid. So when you go into different, Norwalk, Stamford, all these other places where they're paying, tens of thousands of dollars more, and they're not dealing with some of the stuff that we deal with, Fortunately, guys and girls are going that direction.
Any strategies to help recruit maybe seniors? Trying to get them in that track. Just a question.
Yeah. So we have a junior responders club that the police department has, and they have the cadets. We send them to a training up in Massachusetts. We get them a grant for that, and they go once a year. It's just trying to get them involved young. And I think, being positive, and it's a big drive. We try and recruit from within Bridgeport. One thing that we were very successful at doing is we had at least, I say about 8 or 10 security officers became police officers. And it's so like we have Antoine Sistrunk right now. He was a security officer at Harding High School, now as a police officer. So he has that institutional knowledge. We have Rondell Jones, Nicole Colon, Jonathan Mendez, Walker, Tiago Reyes. So we've done a good job of transitioning them over and having that mindset. So, thank you.
Mr. Benahan?
Okay, I'm going to ask more questions. Thank you for your question, answer. Now the question I'm going to ask is about the uniform.
Yes.
I know for the day one when the former asked, did they change the uniform? I was the first one that said, I'm not agreeing. They know that. For me, they don't look professional, and I'm going to tell you why. Last year that I went to one of the school and I dressed just one of your security guards. They don't stop me. They don't say nothing. They thought I was a security guard. So imagine another person, and I'm not gonna say the name of the school because I don't want the school to have issue, but I've spoke to the principal. And I say, imagine another person that dressed just like me, and they keep walking, anything happen. When I have a school like you have your uniform, professional, respect the law, everybody, oh, the security is here, the police officer is here. But that uniform like that, like everybody said, and you know everybody say that it's like a State Farm or Target. I dressed, I tell you like that. They see me in the cameras. There was a security guard, and I keep walking to the cafeteria where the kids was eating. Imagine a crazy person come. What's gonna happen? So my point is, and I hope so. They have a professional, their own uniform. They respect, they say something security, principal police off, like they have before. This uniform, I'm sorry, Captain Greg and Tenant Park, not go with me. I don't find that professional for Bridgeville School.
So the uniforms got changed about 4 or 5 years ago, and that was by the superintendent. And the whole philosophy behind it was the security officers wore a uniform like a police. And certain schools, and more with students that come from different countries, was scared because they thought they were police officers and they looked like corrections officers. And he said, it's about bringing everyone together. We want them to feel comfortable. So, and you know what? I didn't argue, I said, look, I like the security uniform. We spend a lot of money on it. It's going to cost us a lot of money. And the superintendent said, no, I want a softer approach. I want the kids to feel comfortable. I don't want them thinking they're police officers or identifying themselves as police officers. We had a big movement at the time. So it's a boss. And it is what it is. The security, it's red and, they have the emblem on the shirt. You want to,
You'll see that,
So, and the new ones have security on the back. Big security on the back, a sign on the back. They have red flannel jackets. So, but again, we've been buying these for the last, 5 years. In addition, when we started buying these, we cut the price of the uniforms in half because they were cheaper uniforms. So we saved $40,000 a year. We've got 4 years or 5 years of uniforms. You guys want to change them back, you can change them back. It's up to the superintendent or whoever has that say so. But, and I get mixed reviews. I get some security officers who love them. I get some who don't like them. So, at the end of the day, the superintendent at the time made that choice. They're the boss. We're not going to argue. It is what it is. And as far as the public's concerned, mixed reviews again. Some people love them, some don't. To me, it's not what the uniform looks like, it's what's on inside. It's a person representing this. This is what it is. So
I think we got more respect though.
Yeah.
They look at us now, they call us Jake from State Farm.
Trying not to laugh.
Tell them what it is.
No, speak into the microphone so that way.
But going back about your thank you, sir. Going back, you say about the former, of course, he decided to make the change the uniform, and he decided thing that was wrong. I want the security guard look professional. I'm not here, like you said, the other student look, they're scared because this, because that. I don't want to get scared, but they understand we have somebody professional that will care in the safety of the school. Look at what happened in Sandy Hook because everybody was welcome, and look at what happened. I told you that I walk inside the school as the same uniform, and I walk like they thought was a security. I want people when they see that's a security, because the first thing was happen, anything happen in the school, who's going to first respond? The security guard, right? Before the SRO, before the police show up. So I want them to be professional, Captain Greg, and I respect.
I'm fine.
I respect that, and I want they look nice, they present Bridgeville School the way it's supposed to be. So people, they respect it because people, parents, students, they call them, like he said, State Farm, Target, stuff like that. Sometimes I go to Target, I say, oh my God, how many security guard we have here when I go to Target. So I prefer, look more professional and let's have, people respect our security because they always, be the first response. Something happened. They don't want something locked down, lock in. I know what is locked down, lock in. Crossing the school. They are the one that put the chest in the front. Not until you show up. Not me, not the parent, not the students. And the principals behind them, because principals are very smart too. So they are. So I want people respect them.
Yeah, I agree.
Anything before I can ask questions?
Any other
Can I-
questions from board members, committee members? Go ahead, Mr. Sokolovic.
Yeah, I'd like to piggyback while we're on the uniform.
Mr. Sokolovic, microphone.
Yes. Like piggyback while we're on the uniforms, I was here when that change was made, and you did touch upon a lot of the points that were made, and feeling like a prison guards, feeling like some of our schools actually look like prisons with the concrete walls and stuff like that. Our students some of our students have actually parent members in prisons, unfortunately, and it feels like a restrictive environment. And one thing you said that was very interesting is it's the man that makes the uniform, not the uniform. You might not have said it in that way, not the uniform that makes the man, but security, like the teachers, it's their command presence, whether they control their school or whether they control the classroom. It's not the shirt they're wearing. If we got people depending on an article of clothing to get their command present out there, I think the problem may be a bit deeper than a piece of cloth. And I think this may have some union contract implications as well. Is there uniforms in their contract? Is it? Yeah, so that's a bargaining issue that I don't even think we should really be discussing outside the bargaining table. So, thank you.
Any other questions or comments from board members? I'll turn back to Mr. Benahan.
Thank you. Captain Gray, why we have principals that they like to specific security? Are you rotate all the security? Because I know principals, they were, no, I want still the security. He know what to do. He know what he's doing, for that, are they rotate, or when this principal, assistant principal ask you, no, let me have the security here, don't change it?
No, so a principal will not dictate what security guard goes to their schools.
Sorry, I
So
didn't hear you. Say it again because we're making the noise. Say it again. Done? Thank you. Go ahead. Go ahead, Captain.
no, so a principal will not dictate what schools the security officer goes to. It's the needs of the district.
Thank you. The other one is, I know, and this is very important for me. I know we got a lead guard, all right? It's Mr. Luis Santiago, all right? I know that I see Mr. Luis Santiago to go in different schools, check, what's going on. He's doing his job the way it's supposed to be. So we can have more, let's say, another lead guard so they can split. Because I know one lead guard and you, I know you're doing your job. It's more, it's very important, but you have reality too. And having one lead guard going to school, sometimes you have that lead guard all the time in that school because situation, the process, you need to check, be sure that lead guard do the report. And I know Mr. Santiago is doing a phenomenal job. My respect for him and everything. But at least you cannot have another lead guard to, like a divide. Okay, you take the west side, or we can rotate, we need to check.
Yeah, it's a financial thing. If Marlene wants to give a few extra dollars to do it, that's fine. I mean, I think lead guards are great, and I think it's really good. But it's a financial thing because.
Okay. It's coming from a Mississippi Financial Committee. Okay. All right, sound good. Thank you. I appreciate that. We're going to work with that. Cameras. I know some cameras from Bridgeville School. They're not working very well. They look blurry. I'm concerned about that because something happened. How proof you have? I can give you an example of Bashing High School. Parent Center. It's in the middle. You got the camera from the gym. You got the camera going to the cafeteria. Look blurry. You don't see who came, something happened, you don't see. But if the person come close, the cafeteria or the gym, you see that. So I know another school, they have a camera, they can see how dirty is your nail. Because I see that. And you showed me in your department. Why what's going on with that?
So Basic is very old. and we don't want to invest money into Bassett because you're getting a new school.
Mhm.
I'm pleased to say that we did get a grant through Nadira, and we're going to be changing out, not Bassett, because it's.
I just give a sample Bassett, but
Right.
I can have another
We
one.
still have a lot of schools with analog cameras. We need to get rid of them. Cameras are very expensive. There's a lot of cameras in the district. They break. There needs to be a plan where we exchange them as they go. But we got a grant to change out a lot, about 75% of the analog cameras in the district. So we're going to start that project in the summertime when the kids are out of school, so we can change 75% of the analog cameras. We're also looking at another grant, sustainability. Fairchild Wheeler is now 12 years old. Technology comes end of life. So we're looking at another grant I'm working on where we can start looking at Fairchild Wheeler and a couple of the other schools to start redoing them over again, because once we wait, they get old and they break, and then it costs us more money.
I know, like a classical story, and it's Tisdale. It's the other churches in Beechwood. I forgot her name right now. And I know they don't have the camera. Exactly, they have the cameras. They're not working very well. And I'm worried too about some cameras. I can give a Tisdale because I went there. When you go outside, they have a camera for the door, but they don't have nothing. It's the students cross the street with the crossing guard. If something happened, God forgive, you would not take the play. You not want to take who was it, what happened, and then nothing.
So Tisdale School them cameras are the original with the school. We've applied for the grant for Tisdale for like 5-6 years. They keep turning us down. That's one of the schools that we're going to change all the cameras out with this grant. And I don't want to go into every specific school.
No.
Because.
No, I can give it because I went to a different school and I stay outside to see what camera's working or who don't have the camera and stuff like that. And
we just don't want to.
No, I understand. But I just want to let you know that I really checked, so.
I believe you. I believe you.
Thank you. The other one, I know all your security, they're supposed to do a report, right? Anything's going on in the school, let's say a fight or assault or when anything, they have to do a report. And then that report go where?
Goes to the security office. Sergeant Parks will review it.
Yeah.
We'll make sure it's good. If something happens and there's any allegations that they use any kind of excessive force, the principals will call, we'll speak to HR, we'll review it. I mean, understanding a security officer's job is to go hands-on, right? So but there's that fine line, and they are trained, CPI trained. So we encourage them, or we tell them that they have to write a report, and we just review these reports.
Your budget, how much, if I can know, if I can, I believe it's public, about the budget, what would you use for your security?
I don't know off the top of my head. It's a lot of money.
I know it's a lot of money. I know it's a lot of money. So I would like to know when you get a chance,
Yeah, you call me.
Yeah. I have a question for you. And what is the role of the police officer in the school and at the games?
For the SRO?
Let's not police officers.
They're SROs.
Let's put it SRO. Because I know, okay, sometimes we got SRO and sometimes we got police officers.
No, a police officer is an SRO.
Okay.
So in schools, when they respond, they'll respond to a call.
I know Ms. Prack want to say something, Ms. Prack.
No, I'm waiting.
Because I see you.
I'm waiting.
Okay. Sorry, say it again.
So what do you mean in school?
What is the role of the police officer when they go to, on the school, SRO, going to the school?
So because we have so little, most of the time, you want to say how many calls we've had?
Yeah. So the SROs responded to the schools for September up to last Friday, the 5th, 628 times. Their role is safety and security, but they're called either by security, by a parent, or by a principal for assistance. And that can be a range of things. So 628 times in 153 days of school. We have 38 schools that they respond to with 3 officers. So kind of circling back to what you were asking about before, with city officers, the SROs try to take those calls because they're more familiar with the kids. They're more familiar with all of the, like the captain said, the resources that we can offer and that the schools offer. At the games, those are police officers, but they are the same 3 SROs and myself that you may see at games. If you see city police officers, then they were probably, if we weren't there, then someone called 911. But 9 times out of 10, they're only called if we weren't there or if we needed assistance. And there's been a few times where there's been activities at games, after games, during a game, where the crowd was large and we needed assistance from other patrol units.
We had, just for example, we had Harding High School at the beginning of the season. We had to clear the whole school out, the whole gymnasium out because all the fights that were going on.
That's about the same thing with a game, right? The same thing as all they do with a regular school days. The same thing with games.
Yes.
Thank you, Lieutenant Craig. And we have sometimes you got security. They don't come exactly the way it's supposed to be. I know they come in with the red and khaki, but they don't come exactly with the uniform correctly. And I'm worried about if they're not coming with the uniform correctly, you know, with the black shoes, with your belt, the t-shirt inside, you know, something like that. What is it? Like I told you, the league guard checked down, or you guys want to go around, you told them, listen, this is not the first time I asked you about this, correct your uniform the way it's supposed to be. But if you see the kid doing it, what's the process?
Well, so if an officer, and I think we're pretty good for the most cases, but if an officer is not wearing the proper uniform, and then we'll have a discussion on it, and we'll give them some counseling. Corrective counseling, right? Hey, this is what's getting together. If it elevates like anything, then HR will get involved. Miss Martinez or Tim McNamara, then they will handle it. You know, and it's the principals. The principals are told, you know, they have to, you know, obviously it's their school building. So they look at the guards. They see the guards every single day. But we've been pretty good, you know, as far as uniforms concerned. Yeah, we've been pretty good.
In all this security, that they have a job impression, they know what to do, and they really sign. They know the policy, the protocol, right? So for now, them follow the policy the way it's supposed to be, right? And I believe they sign for that, so they can know, so they know this is what happens if you don't follow the policy.
Well, we meet with the guards in training, and you know, at least once a year, sometimes twice a year, we'll bring HR to the meetings, and they will talk about different stuff, sick time policies, you know, late policies, all different policies. I mean, you know, they have a hard time. It's a tough job. They don't get paid big money. They work extremely hard. They deal with a lot of stuff. They're not, you know, what folks don't understand is they're not just security guards, they're mentors, the social, they're everything. Their job, and, you know, it's about, you know, helping the children out.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying they're certified social workers, anything like that, but they take on different roles. They're there for the students.
Someday they act like a mom and dad for
Yeah.
I know, I see that.
And we have some great ones and we have some okay ones. I mean, like in any profession, you know. But I think overall, I think they do a great job.
I have more questions, but I will share.
I do have just a comment. I do want to say that it is pretty commendable that with the over 400 calls in 153 days, that only 12 incidents were only identified as escalating to warrant an arrest of a student or person, whatever the situation may be, because I do want to keep confidentiality to the district and safety first. So I just had that one comment. that I wanted to express. Mr. Sokolovic?
Yes, yeah, I want to piggyback off that for a second. Of those 12, those were 12 arrests. Do they represent separate instances or there's multiple arrests in one instance?
Out of those 12, I want to say there was 11 incidences.
Okay.
There were 2, in one incident was 2 arrests.
Because I know sometimes we have multiple issues, multiple fights, multiple combatants. I think last year we had one with quite a few. That skewed the results a little. As far as lines of responsibility, it's always troubled me that we pay for security, but the city negotiates the contract. What are the lines of responsibility as far as, you mentioned going in front of the personnel director and this and that. So say there's an issue with a security guard that, God forbid, requires some discipline. Who carries out that discipline? The city side or the Board of Education side?
Board of Education.
Okay. So, yeah, and sometimes I'm a little unclear on actually, you don't directly supervise the security guards?
Yeah, we directly
supervise
day-to-day operations. Mhm.
And if there's a conflict between where the superintendent would want security placed and the police department would like security placed, who's got controlling authority?
So we've never had that issue. But obviously, when the police respond, if someone's calling 911, the police, they take over the scene.
Correct.
That's just,
Yeah, I'm talking about not like an emergency situation, clearly emergency situation, DPD in charge. But if there's, say, a basketball game or a football game, lacrosse game, whatever sporting event, or even a play that's got over a certain number of people, which requires a security presence. If the superintendent thinks a security guard will suffice, and you think a police officer will suffice. Police officer is obviously more costly, and a security guard is less costly. And if it's not a clear and present danger, can you override the superintendent and put a police officer there? Or is it the superintendent's call in a non-emergency situation how to deploy staff?
so what I can say is this: public safety events, stuff going on. We'll have a conversation. It's never, ever, in 10 years I've been doing this, it's never, ever been an issue. I think, and you can speak to Marlene on this, we've been very fiscally responsible on knowing what it was. When we first took over, we had SROs, or school police officers, working tennis games and baseball games. We stopped it. We try and use school security officers the best we can. We just don't have the personnel. But again, certain events, if it's an outside event, everything depending on the climate, what kind of event, how many people are doing it. So it's never, ever been an issue. And I don't expect it to be, because if we don't have police, we're very limited. School security does a great job. If we use them, we'll use them.
Thank you.
I have a question. This is just from personal experience on the board. When we were having a meeting regarding the transition for superintendent, then I'm to assume that was a school resource officer called to be at Central High School to monitor a Board of Ed meeting, and that prevented the public from inquiring questions from the former chair and former board members that went in the back door. So was that a request from the superintendent at the time, or was that a request from the chair at the time?
I think both. I believe it was a board chair. I believe it was. It's such a long time ago. Again, we're not here for politics. When we go there, if it's a concern, it's a concern. Obviously, we don't want a crowd going into a school of adults when there's class going on, and on that occasion, I got called and I stopped the meeting. We're not doing this here. This ain't a place. We have class going on. We have a night school. It's done. They weren't happy with it, but I'm like, my job is public safety. If something happens to one of those students, it's me going to that house talking to those parents. It's me getting questions. When we do security details, we do these details. If something happens, we're fully responsible. So we have to ensure public safety. We want to make sure all the kids are safe going home. And we can't guarantee anything. But what we can do is through our training and experience, and we have quite a bit, this is what we determine, this is why. And if we're questioned, we have the answers to go with it.
Thank you.
Can I?
Mr. Minahan,
Thank you, Madam Chair.
also for the record is 9:27.
Yeah, my wife's waiting, so I didn't.
You know why we have this in Lone Lomita, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't want to get details. It's not the Madam Chair's fault, and it's previous. I know SRO, I believe the city pays the SRO, right, not the board education, right? I know the city pay you guys, not the board education. So why the reason our security get paid by city, and you get paid by, the security get paid by board education, you get paid by the city, and you supervise our securities out the board education?
I don't know.
With all due respect, I like you a lot for so many years, and we don't know you, but for us, board education pay for the security. I want somebody from board education, and like I told you, lead guard 1, lead guard 2, or we don't use the supervisor. The lead guard, we get paid for the board education, take care of our security because you guys pay by the city. I know you will not do it for me and an elder, but if I tell you Captain Greg or Tenant Park, this is happening, blah, blah, blah. You can tell me, listen, I don't need to listen to you. I don't need to get order from you. Board education, they don't pay me. The city pay me. So I know you're not going to do that for me, but that's not my question. How come you guys get paid for the city and you take care of my security and security get paid by it?
Because I think many years ago, you had a security director, an assistant security director, Mel Weir and Jimmy Neely, that you're paying close to $300,000 for.
Yeah.
And it just didn't work.
No.
It didn't work. So we came in and you saved all that money. Saved a lot of money. And now you're having the security officers trained by the police, supervised by the police. And it works because we've been doing it 10, 11 years. And again, it's that relationship that we have. So it works. So the Board of Ed is making out. And it's not about the Board of Ed. It's not about money. It's about the safety of the kids. So it is successful. If it wasn't successful, there's no way we would still be doing it.
Thank you. I know we have to talk about that, but I want to say, let's say the last question for now. I don't know, let's collect a checkpoint. When the point of whoever comes to the school and they go to metal detector, I don't like because they teachers, because they know you, because you're my friend, because I'm a board member. No, go ahead, pass. I don't like when the security do that. All right, the security didn't know the life of each person come. Of course, I will never do that. Before something crazy I do, God take my life away because I'm care about everyone. But I always pass. I always take out of everything. I tell the security, go ahead. I tell them, no, Mr. No, I'm a human just like you. The same day you did it for everyone. I want to do it for, everyone. Sometimes we got teachers, they are, forget it. They are professional, they got mental issues, they got problems in the family. You don't know them when they're coming home from driving, they are arguing because the guy passed the light or something and they go straight to the school. Because I see that. But I don't know why some securities. No, go ahead, pass. You're okay. All parents, all other students. I don't want that. I know we got camera that check that, but I don't want the security because something happened. I know you go back to the cameras. And you're gonna check what happened. How come you don't check that person because I have this bad. I'm a board member, but you don't know exactly what the hell's I'm bringing up.
I will get them to check you every time you go in the building.
I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with what to do it. I told him, no, I'm gonna check my bag. You can ask them. I don't have a problem with that. But it's good to go there. And another thing, sometimes when they check the bag, yeah, fine. But you know what's going on? No question. They can go deep and check what's going on. You don't have a drug, knife, gun, something.
Well, now, all the high schools have x-ray machines.
Yes, I see that.
So we put the bags through the x-ray machines. This is not a strip search. This is a school. It's a learning environment. This is not a prison. We will not make it a prison. Kids have to feel safe coming to schools, and they shouldn't feel like prison. So, no, we're not going to strip search kids and do everything, right? We do our we do our checks. Not to get into like I said before, we have layers and I don't want to get into it all, but it works. Is it 100%? No, there's nothing 100%. Do teachers go through the metal detectors? No, they have the ID. We know who they are. They pass right through. Could a teacher have a bad time at home? Absolutely. So could a police officer. So could the principal. So could the custodian. I mean, at some point, this is where we have our red flags and we have our layers of security. That's what we do. But what I can tell you is this. I think we have one of the safest school districts in the state of Connecticut. What we do.
And all the security guards from Bristol School, they know who are all the board members, right?
No, I don't think so.
Why not?
Because you're board members.
No,
You're
but
not
they know who they
principals.
are. No, I said they know who are board, we are board members.
I don't think they know each board member.
Because I already have experience that you got security staff, they don't know who I was.
No.
So, and they have a dual process, I don't mind. But, I feel that the board members, the security, they have to know who's the board members. And has to be careful how to talk to the board members, because the last thing.
Mr. Benahan, I'm
I'm
going
sorry.
to interrupt you just because I do have one comment.
Okay, no, I'm done. I already
Okay,
done. So I
great.
just wanted to tell the.
It's great. I mean, I will say the misuse of school resource officers, not school resource, our school security, by non-school staff. I've seen it happen where they've asked me as well as constituents in a school building, for my information, my name, my address, and it was for a city councilwoman.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's a misuse of our.
They shouldn't be
school.
doing that.
Yeah, and so
Okay, yep.
I brought issue at that. No, I'm not leaving it confidential. This was at Thomas Hooker School. This was the issue between the alleged potential merger of Wilbur Cross and Thomas Hooker, and City Councilwoman Maria Pereira were collecting all constituent information for her own voter database. And I feel like that is a complete misuse of our school, our building, our facility, as well as our resource officers. And there was also a police officer outside. And so I am curious whether that was a school resource officer. But that is, that in that situation, it comes off as an abuse and a misuse of what is in the Board of Ed's purview. And I did want to bring it up because.
I agree.
Great, yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and so I think that needs to be clear that it doesn't matter if you are an elected official. And I'm an elected official, but I don't market my face out there. Look at me, it's election, like most people are doing right now. But I think that's just an abuse of the policy, and that should be communicated, that just because you're a city council person doesn't mean you get to collect parent data for your own personal privilege, especially since you don't necessarily have a say in our schools unless you're getting us money. And so, yeah, just wanted to bring that up.
I just finished my question. I appreciate that. Any question, I forgot, I will email you guys, but I appreciate your time. At least, we can keep seeing each month. Right. No more question, no more comment now for now, Madam Chair.
And are there any questions, comments? Are you sure? Need another second? Okay, seeing that there's none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn at this time. I'll second. All in favor?
Bye.
Any objections, any opposition? None, see none. Time ends 9:35 PM. Take care, bye-bye.